Shimmer. Hyson. Let me, do this. I'm so sleepy, but luckily this is just a reading stream, so then I can just calmly read. We know what I think I'm gonna do. I'm gonna find a YouTube video with fire crackling in the background. That's something I was thinking I wanted to do, and I was supposed to set up earlier, but I was so fucking tired. Just being outside. I didn't even do anything. All I did was sit on the couch and period paints. Mom went and got a fucking hair done in someone's apartment. Wasn't as sketchy as we thought it was. That's all I did. So I got up. I had to join my mother at a hair appointment because she was too scared to go alone. And I just sat there on the couch like, yep, downloaded a bunch of things. Like, I shouldn't be tired, but I'm on my meds, and that just makes me so tired. I forget I'm a sleepy bitch when I'm not on my ADHD meds. Hang on a second. Fireplace ambience. Rain in cozy cabin with warm fireplace and gentle rain on lakeside to relaxation to study and sleeping. You think that would be nice? I mean, just sitting some for hours makes me tired. That's true. You think that would be nice, or do we want straight cozy fire ambiance? Ooh, rain and fireplace sounds. Oh my god, that scared me. Here, Bagga, you mute. Hi, Ducky. Hi, James. How you doing? You ready for some Lord of the Rings reading? How's this sound? Wait on. That seems rather loud. I put a little lower for stream. How's that sound? Too loud? Maybe just a fireplace ambience. Let me just find fireplace. How about this? Oh, I think it's nicer about the rain. What do you think? Mm-hmm. Only stopping for a couple minutes doing bingo for my nana. Alrighty. Enjoy your bingo. And thank you for stopping in. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, just the fireplace is fine. Wow. Hey, Steaks. You ready for some reading? I think this will be quite nice, actually. I think it'll be quite nice. My nice loud and clear. I have some of my cappuccino, actually. I'll be back in about half an hour. Alright, James. See you, man. Okay, shall we crack on into the reading? Chapter 5, A Conspiracy Unmasked. What? I'm wondering if there's like a song that goes with this. Black Rider, a sign of the prancing pony, a knife in the dark. I don't... I think this will be fine. Okay. Let's get to reading. Chapter 5, A Conspiracy Unmasked. I made the music louder now to annoy me. Now we had better get ourselves home, said Mary. There's something funny about all this, I see, but it must wait till we get in. They turned down the furry lane, which was straight and well kept and edged with large whitewashed stones. In 100 years or so, it brought them to the riverbank. 100 years? Great start to my reading stream. In 100 yards or so, it brought them to the riverbank, where there was a broad wooden landing stage. I'm warming up, don't mind me. A large flat ferry boat was moored beside it. The white bollards... What was it? Bollard? The white bollards near the water's edge glimmered in the light of two lamps on high posts. Behind them, the mist and flat fields were now above the hedges, but the water before them was dark, with only a few curling wisps like steam along the reeds by the bank. There seemed to be less fog on the further side. Mary led the pony over a gangway onto the ferry, and the others followed. Mary then pushed slowly off with a long pole. The Brandywine flowed slow and broad before them. On the other side, the bank was steep, and up it a winding path climbed from the further landing. Lamps were twinkling there. Behind loomed up the Buck Hill, and out of it, through stray shrouds of mist, shone many round windows, yellow and red. They were the windows of Brandy Hall, the ancient home of the Brandy Bucks. Long ago, Gore Hedad, Old Buck, head of the Old Buck family, one of the oldest in the Marish or indeed in the Shire, had crossed the river, which was the original boundary of the land eastwards. He built and excavated Brandy Hall, changed his name to Brandy Buck, and settled down to become master of what was virtually a small independent country. His family grew and grew, and after his days continued to grow until Brandy Hall occupied the whole of the low hill and had 3 large front doors, many side doors, and 100 windows. The Brandy Bucks and the numerous dependents then began to burrow and later to build all round about. That was the origin of Buckland, a thickly inhabited strip between the river and the old forest, a sort of colony from the Shire. Its chief village was Buckleberry, clustering the banks and slopes behind Brandy Hall. I'm like struggling to read. Do my best. We'll get through this. I even lit a candle, trying to make everything nice and ambient, good ambience for me. Where was I? The people in the Marish were friendly with the Bucklanders and the authority of the master of the hall, as head of the Brandy Buck family was called, was still acknowledged by the farmers between Stock and Rushy. But most of the folk of the old Shire regarded the Bucklanders as peculiar, half foreigners as they were. Though, as a matter of fact, they were not very different from the other hobbits of the Four Farthings. Except in one point, they were fond of boats, and some of them could swim. The land was originally unprotected from the east, but on that side they had built a hedge, the high hay. It had been planted many generations ago, but now thick and tall, for it was constantly tended. It ran all the way from Brandywine Bridge in a big loop curving away from the river to Haysend, where the Withy window followed out of the rough forest into the Brandywind. The Withy Windle. Well over 20 miles from end to end, but of course it was not a complete protection. The forest drew close to the hedge in many places. The Bucklanders kept their doors locked after dark, and that also was not unusual in the Shire. The ferry boat moved slowly across the water. The Buckland shore drew nearer. Sam was the only member of the party who had not been over the river before. He had a strange feeling as the low, gurgling stream slipped by. His old life lay behind in the mists. Dark adventure lay in front. He scratched his head and for a moment had a passing wish that Mr. Frodo could have gone on living quietly at Bag End. Give me just one moment. The 4 hobbits stepped off the ferry. Mary was tying it up and Pippin was already leading the pony up the path. When Sam, who had been looking back as if to take farewell of the Shire, said in a hoarse whisper, "Look back, Mr. Frodo. Do you see anything?" On the far stage, under the distant lamps, they could just make out a figure. It looked like a dark black bundle left behind, but as they looked, it seemed to move and sway this way and that, as if searching the ground. It then crawled or went crouching back into the gloom beyond the lamps. "What in the Shire is that?" exclaimed Mary. "Look, something that is following us," said Frodo. "But don't ask any more. Now let's get away at once." They hurried up the path to the top of the bank, but when they looked back to the far shore, it was shrouded in mist and nothing could be seen. "Thank goodness you don't keep any boats in the West Bank," said Frodo. "Can horses cross the river?" They can go on 20 miles north to Brandywine Bridge, or they might swim, answered Mary. Though I never heard of any horse swimming the Brandywine, but what have horses to do with it? I'll tell you later. Let's get indoors, then we can talk. All right, you and Pippin know your way, so I'll just ride on and tell Fatty Bulger that you are coming. We'll see about supper and things. We had our supper early with Farmer Maggot, said Frodo, but we could do with another. I don't know, I feel like I'm struggling to breathe a little bit. Maybe the coffee was a bad idea. I wonder if I am allergic or something to coffee. Need to wake up again. I believe in you, said. Are you telling me? I had a pillow behind me, but I just realized it just did not give me any space in my chair. Realizing when I breathe in through my mouth, it sounds a little hoarse, and my brain just goes, what? Do I have asthma? Am I developing asthma? But I wonder if it's just the coffee. Ah! Thank you for the 10 biddies. Thanks. I was saying you need to. What do you mean? Oh, because I'm stumbling to read. That is probably the reason. You shall have it. Give me that basket, said Mary, and rode on ahead into the darkness. It was some distance from the Brandywine to Frodo's new house at Crick Hollow. They passed the Buck Hill and Brandy Hall on their left, and on the outskirts of Buckleberry, struck the main road of Buckland that ran south from the bridge. Half a mile northward along this, they came to a lane opening on their right. This they followed for a couple of miles as it climbed up and down into the country. At last they came to a narrow gate and a thick hedge. Nothing could be seen of the house in the dark. It stood back from the lane in the middle of a wide circle of lawn, surrounded by a belt of low trees inside the outer hedge. Frodo had chosen it, because it stood in an out-of-the-way corner of the country and there was no other dwellings close by. You can get in and out without being noticed. It had been built a long while before by the Brandybucks, for the use of guests or members of the family that wished to escape from the crowded life of Brandy Hall for a time. It's an old-fashioned, countrified house as much like a hobbit hole as possible. It was long and low with no upper story. It had a roof of tough, round windows and a large round door. As they walked up the green path from the gate, no light was visible. The windows were dark and shuttered. Frodo knocked on the door, and Fatty Bulger opened it. A friendly light streamed out. They slipped in quickly and shut themselves and the light inside. They were in a wide hall with doors on either side. In front of them, a passage ran back down the middle of the house. Well, what do you think of it? Asked Mary, coming up the passage. We've done our best in a short time to make it look like a home. After all, Fatty and I only got here with the last coach load yesterday. Frodo looked round. It did look like a home. Many of his own favorite things, or Bilbo's things, they reminded him sharply of him in the new setting, were arranged as neatly as possible as they had been at Bag End. It was a pleasant, comfortable, welcoming place, and he found himself wishing that he had really come in here to settle down in a quiet retirement. It seemed unfair to have put his friends to all this trouble, and he wondered again how he was going to break the news to them that he must leave them so soon, indeed at once. Yet that would have to be done that very night before they all went to bed. It's delightful, he said with an effort. I hardly feel that I've moved at all. 3 whole hours of reading. I feel like I should grab potato and let the little Groblin learn a little literature. Yes, do it. I love the fact it's gonna be 3 hours like calm. Imagine those like YouTube videos, 3 hours, 3 hours of reading with a random vape sound interrupting it. The travelers hung up their cloaks and piled their packs on the floor. Mary led them down the passage and threw open a door at the far end. Firelight came out and a puff of steam. A bath, cried Pippin. Oh, bless the Meriadoc. Which order shall we go in? Said Frodo. Eldest first or quickest first? You'll be lost either way, Master Peregrine. Trust me to arrange things better than that, said Mary. We can begin life at Crick Hollow with a quarrow over baths. In that room there are 3 tubs and a copper full of boiling water. There are also towels, mats, and soap, but get inside and be quick. 3 hours of reading to sleep to while screeching half of the video and vaping. Yes. Me randomly stumbling over words and laughing. Mm-hmm. Get inside and be quick. I don't know if I said that. Mary and Fatty went into the kitchen on the other side of the passage and busied themselves with the final preparations for a late supper. For when you want to be on the edge of sleep but not fully asleep. Yep. Snatches of competing songs came from the bathroom, mixed with the sound of splashing and wallowing. The voice of Pippin was suddenly lifted up above the others in one of Bilbo's favorite bath songs. Sing hey for the bath at close of day that washes the weary mud away. A loon is he that will not sing, oh, water hot is a noble thing. Oh, sweet is the sound of falling rain, and the brook that leaps from hill to plain. But better than rain and rippling streams is water hot that smokes and steams. Oh, water cold we may pour at need, down a thirsty throat be glad indeed. But better is beer if drink we lack, and water hot poured down the back. Oh, water is fair that leaps on high in a fountain white beneath the sky. But never did fountain sound so sweet as splashing hard water with my feet. There was a terrific splash and a shout of "Whoa!" from Frodo. It appeared that a lot of Pippin's bath had imitated a fountain and leaped on high. Merry went to the door. "What about supper and beer in the throat?" he called. Frodo came out drying his hair. "There's so much water in the air that I'm coming into the kitchen to finish," he said. "Lark," said Merry, looking in. The stone floor was swimming. "You ought to mop all that up before you get anything to eat, Peregrine," he said. "Hurry, or we shan't wait for you." They had supper in the kitchen on a table near the fire. "I suppose you three won't want mushrooms again," said Fredegar without much hope. Yes, we shall," cried Pippin. "They're mine," said Frodo, "given to me by Mrs. Maggot, a queen among farmers' wives. Take your greedy hands away, and I'll serve them." Hobbits have a passion for mushrooms, surpassing even the greediest likes of big people. Ew, mushrooms. A fact which partly explains young Frodo's long expeditions to the renowned fields of the Marish and the wrath of the injured maggots. On this occasion there was plenty for all, even according to Hobbit standards. There were even also many other things to follow. When they had finished, even Fatty Bolger heaved a sigh of content. They pushed back the table and drew chairs round the fire. "We'll clear up later," said Mary. "Now tell me all about it. I guess that you've been having adventures which were not quite fair without me." "I want a full account, and most of all I want to know what was the matter with old Maggot and why he spoke to me like that. He sounded almost as if he was scared, if that is possible." "We have all been scared," said Pippin after a pause, in which Frodo stared at the fire and did not speak. "You would have been too if you had been chased for 2 days by black riders." "And what are they?" "Black figures riding on black horses," answered Pippin. "If Frodo won't talk, I will tell you the whole tale from the beginning." He then gave a full account of their journey from time when they left Hobbiton. Sam gave various supporting nods and exclamations. Frodo remained silent. "I think you were making it all up." "I should think you were making it all up," said Merry, "if I had not seen that black shape on the landing stage and heard the queer sound in Maggot's voice. What do you make of all of it, Frodo?" "Cousin Frodo has been very close," said Pippin, "but the time has come for him to open out. So far we have been given nothing more to go on than Farmer Maggot's guess that it has something to do with old Bilbo's treasure." Me. Pushing my chair in so I can actually put my back on it. "And a little sip of my cappuccino." It's kind of nice just reading. Although my voice feels already strained. Okay. "That was only a guess," said Frodo hastily. "Maggot does not know anything." "Need more water." "Cappuccino." I do actually have some water. Lol. When I'm desperate, I'll drink it. It's like cold water. I prefer something warm. I feel like cold water makes my voice hurt more. "Old Maggot is a shrewd fellow," said Merry. A lot goes on behind his round face that does not come out in his talk. I heard that he used to go into the old forest in one time, and he has a reputation of knowing a good many strange things. But you can at least tell us, Frodo, whether you think his guess good or bad. I'm here with popcorn. Enjoy. I am jealous. I'm out of popcorn, Karim. I think, answered Frodo slowly, that it was a good guess as far as it goes. There is a connection with Bilbo's old adventures, and the riders are looking, or perhaps one ought to say searching, for him or for me. I also fear, if you want to know, that it is no joke at all, and that I am not safe here or anywhere else. He looked round at the windows and walls as if he was afraid they would suddenly give away. The others looked at him in silence and exchanged meaning glances among themselves. It's coming out in a minute, whispered Pippin to Merry. Merry nodded. Well, said Frodo at last, sitting up and straightening his back as if he had made a decision. I can't keep it dark any longer. I have something to tell you all, but I don't know how quite to begin. I think I could help you, said Merry quietly, by telling you some of it myself. What do you mean? Said Frodo, looking at him anxiously. Just this, my dear old Frodo. You are miserable, because you don't know how to say goodbye. You meant to leave the Shire, of course, but dangers come on sooner than you expected, and now you are making up your mind to go at once. And you don't want to. We are very sorry for you. Frodo opened his mouth and shut it again. His look of surprise was so comical that they laughed. Dear old Frodo, said Pippin, did you really think you had thrown dust in all our eyes? You have not been nearly careful or clever enough for that. You have obviously been planning to go and saying farewell to all your haunts all this year since April. We have constantly heard you muttering, shall I ever look down into that valley again, I wonder, and things like that. And pretending that you had come to the end of your money and actually selling your beloved Baggin to those Sackville Bagginses, and all those close talks of Gandalf. Good heavens, said Frodo. I thought I had been both careful and clever. I don't know what Gandalf would say. Is all the Shire discussing my departure, then? Gandalf be roasting Frodo. This is Pippin and Merry roasting Frodo. Gandalf hasn't been seen for quite a few days. Oh no, said Merry. Don't worry about that. The secret won't keep... Hi, Ronnie. Hope you're doing well. Oh no, said Merry. Don't worry about that. The secret won't keep for long, of course, but at present it is. I think only known to us conspirators. After all, you must remember that we know you well, and you are often with you. Ow! Thank you for the 1 billy sticks. We can usually guess what you were thinking, and you'll be able to. To tell you the truth, I've been watching you rather closely ever since he left. I thought you would go after him sooner or later. Indeed, I expected you to go sooner, and lately we have been very anxious. Very kind of you to share, Karim, the popcorn. I wish I could have some. What flavor is it? We have been terrified that you might give us a slip and go off suddenly, all on your own like you did. Ever since this spring we have kept our eyes open, and done a good deal of planning on our own account. You're not going to escape so easily. You have toffee popcorn, actually. You're gonna go get it? I'm not a fan of sweet popcorn. I prefer a good salted popcorn. I agree, Karim, with that. I know how to give you popcorn, please. I'd love some popcorn. Toffee popcorn sounds good. Blech. Blech. Me and Karim will share the salted. You, Sen, and Six can enjoy the toffee. Blech. Ow! I feel like what was thrown at me was definitely not popcorn. It felt more like a bike and some other random junk. I like both, but they're salty more than sweet. Make popcorn redeem, please. Oh, let me write that down. Let me write that down in my little black book. Where's my black book? My chair a little lower. Constantly rises. I don't think it would be a bad idea. Little popcorn redeem. I can have it with the tits thingy when I draw the stuff. You know, the 30 things. Let me write that down. Popcorn redeem. Yeah, written down, Kareem. Written down. Always check my little black book for little notes, little thoughts, little memories. Okay. Let me have a little sip of my cappuccino. Scrumptious. Okay. Now, where am I? But I must go, said Frodo. It cannot be helped, dear friends. It is wretched for all of us, but it's no use your trying to keep me. Since you have guessed so much, please help me and do not hinder me. You do not understand, said Pippin. You must go, and therefore we must too. Merry and I are coming with you. Sam is an excellent fellow and would jump down a dragon's throat to save you, if he did not trip over his own feet. But you need more than one companion in your dangerous adventure. My dear and most beloved hobbits, said Frodo, deeply moved. But I could not allow it. I decided that long ago, too. You speak of danger, but you do not understand. This is no treasure hunt. No there and back journey. I'm flying from deadly peril into deadly peril. Of course we understand, said Merry firmly. This is why we have decided to come. We know the ring is no laughing matter, but we are going to do our best to help you against the enemy. The ring, said Frodo, now completely amazed. Yes, the ring, said Merry. My dear old hobbit, you don't allow for the inquisitiveness of friends. I have known about the existence of the ring for years, before Bilbo went away. In fact, but since he obviously regarded it as secret, I kept the knowledge in my head until we formed our conspiracy. I did not know Bilbo, of course, as well as I know you. I was too young, and he was also more careful. But he was not careful enough. If you want to know how I first found out, I will tell you. Go on, said Frodo, faintly. It was the Sackville Bagginses that were his downfall. As you might expect, one day, a year before the party, I happened to be walking along the road when I saw Bilbo ahead. Suddenly in the distance, the SBs appeared coming towards us. Bilbo slowed down, and then, hey, presto, he vanished. I was so startled that I hardly had the wits to hide myself in a more ordinary fashion, but I got through the hedge and walked along the field inside. I was peeping through into the road after SBs had passed and was looking straight at Bilbo when he suddenly reappeared. I caught a glint of gold as he put something back into his trouser pocket. After that, I kept my eyes open. In fact, I confess that I spied, but you must admit that it was very intriguing, and I was only in my teens. I must be the only one in the Shire, besides you, Frodo, that has ever seen the old fellow's secret book. You have read his book? Cried Frodo. Good heavens above, is nothing safe? Not too safe, I say, said Merry, but I only had one rapid glance, and that was difficult to get. You never left the book about. I wonder what became of it. I should like another look. Have you got it, Frodo? No, it was not a bag end. He must have taken it away. Well, as I was saying, Merry proceeded. I kept my knowledge to myself till the spring when things got serious. Then we formed our conspiracy, and as we were serious too, and meant business, we have not been too scrumptious. Scrumpulous? Scrumpulous. You are not a very easy nut to crack, and Gandalf is worse. But if you want to be introduced to our chief investigator, I can produce him. Where is he? Said Frodo, looking round as if he expected a masked and sinister figure to come out of a cupboard. Step forward, Sam, said Merry, and Sam stood up with a face scarlet up to his ears. Here's our collector of information, and he collected a lot, I can tell you, before he was finally caught, after which I may say he seemed to regard himself as on parole and dried up. Sam, cried Frodo, feeling that amazement could go no further, and quite unable to decide whether he felt angry, amused, relieved, or merely foolish. Yes, sir, said Frodo. Begging your pardon, sir, but I meant no wrong to you, Mr. Frodo, and or to Gandalf for that matter. He has some sense, mind you, and when you said go alone, he said no, take someone as you can trust. But it does not seem that I can trust anyone, said Frodo. Sam looked at him unhappily. It all depends on what you want. Put in better and... Oh my god, where am I? I lost myself. Sam looked at him unhappily. It all depends on what you want, put in Mary. You can trust us to stick to you through thick and thin, to the bitter end. And you can trust us to keep any secrets of yours, closer than you keep it yourself. But you cannot trust us to let you face trouble alone and go off without a word. We are your friends, Frodo. Anyway, there is it. We know most of what Gandalf has told you. We know a good deal about the ring. We are horribly afraid, but we are coming with you or following you like hounds. And after all, sir, added Sam, you did ought to take the elves' advice. Gildor said you should take as was willing, and you can't deny it. I don't deny it, said Frodo, looking at Sam, who was now grinning. I don't deny it. But I'll never believe you are sleeping again, whether you snore or not. I shall kick you hard to make sure. You are a set of deceitful scoundrels, he said, turning to the others, but bless you, he laughed. Getting up and waving his arms, I give in. I will take Gildor's advice. If the danger was not so dark, I should dance for joy. Even so, I cannot help feeling happy, happier than I have felt for a long time. I had dreaded this evening. Good, that's settled. 3 cheers for Captain Frodo and company. They shouted and they danced around him. Merry and Pippin began a song, which they had apparently got ready for the occasion. It was made on the model of the dwarf song that started Bilbo on his venture long ago, and went to the same tune. Farewell, we call to heath and hall, though wind may blow and rain may fall. We must away ere break of day, far over wood and mountain tall, to Rivendell where elves yet dwell, in glades beneath the misty fell. Through moor and waste we ride in haste, and whither then we cannot tell. Where foes ahead behind us dread, beneath the sky shall be our bed, until at last our toil be past, our journey done, our errand sped. We must away, we ride before the break of day. Very good, said Frodo, but in that case there are a lot of things to do before we go to bed under a roof, for tonight at any rate. Oh, that was poetry, said Pippin. Do you really mean to start before the break of day? I don't know, answered Frodo. I fear those black riders, and I am sure it is unsafe to stay in one place long, especially in a place which it is known I was going. Also, Gildor advised me not to wait, but I should very much like to see Gandalf. I could see that even Gildor was disturbed when he heard that Gandalf had not appeared. It really depends on 2 things. How soon could the riders get to Buckleberry, and how soon could we get off? It will take a good deal of preparation. The answer to the second question, said Mary, is that we could get off in an hour. I prepared practically everything. There are 6 ponies in a stable across the fields. Stores and tackles are all packed, except for a few extra clothes and the perishable food. It seems to have been a very efficient conspiracy, said Frodo, but what about the Black Riders? Would it be safe to wait 1 day for Gandalf? That all depends on what you think the riders would do if they found you here, answered Mary. They could have reached you by now, of course, if they were not stopped at the north gate where the hedge runs down to the river bank, just this side of the bridge. The gate guards would not let them through by night, though they might break through. Even in the daylight, they would try to keep them out. I think at any rate, until they got a message through to the master of the hall, they would not like the look of the riders, and would certainly be frightened by them. But of course Buckland cannot resist a determined attack for long. And it is possible that in the morning even a black rider that rode up and asked for Mr. Baggins would be let through. It is pretty generally known that you are coming back to live at Creek Hollow. Let me have a sip of my cappuccino. Frodo sat for a while and thought. I have made up my mind, he said finally. I am starting tomorrow, as soon as it is light, but I am not going by road. It will be safer to wait here than that. If I go through the north gate, my departure from Buckland will be known at once, instead of being secret for several days at least, as it might be. And what is more, the bridge and the east road near the borders will certainly be watched, whether any rider gets into Buckland or not. We don't know how many there are, but there are at least 2, possibly more. The only thing to do is to go off in quite an unexpected direction. But that can only mean going into into the old forest, said Fredegar, horrified. You can't be... But he was there still? I don't know why he just scared me. I'm like, I thought it was only the 4. There's a 5th. I never heard of Fredegar. I remember the start of it. It's like the 5th friend, Fatty. I call him for short. But fucking hell. You can't be thinking of doing that. It's quite as dangerous as Black Riders. Not quite, said Mary. It sounds very desperate, but I believe Frodo is right. It is the only way of getting off without being followed at once with luck. We might get a considerable start. But he won't have any luck in the old forest, objected Fredegar. No. No one ever has luck in there. You'll get lost. People don't go in there. Oh, yes, they do, said Mary. The brandy bucks go in, occasionally, when the fit takes them. We have a private entrance. Frodo went in once, long ago. I have been in several times, usually in daylight, of course, when the trees are sleepy and fairly quiet. Well, do as you think best, said Fredegar. I am more afraid of the old forest than of anything I know about. The stories about it are nightmare, but my vote hardly counts, as I am not going on the journey. Still, I am very glad someone is stopping behind. Who can tell Gandalf what you have done when he turns up? As I am sure he will before long. Fond as he was of Frodo, Fatty Bolger had no desire to leave the Shire, nor to see what lay outside it. His family came from the East Farthing, from Budgeford and Bridgefields, in fact, but he had never been over the Brandywine Bridge. His task, according to the original plans of the conspirators, was to stay behind and deal with inquisitive folk, and to keep up as long as possible the pretense that Mr. Baggins was still living at Creek Hollow. He even brought along some old clothes of Frodo's to help him in playing the part. They little thought how dangerous that part might prove. Excellent, said Frodo, when he understood the plan. We could not have left any message behind for Gandalf otherwise. I don't know whether these riders can read or not, of course, but I should not have dared to risk a written message in case they got in and searched the house. But if Fatty is willing to hold the fort, I can be sure of Gandalf knowing the way we have gone. That decides me. I'm going into the old forest first thing tomorrow. Well, that's that, said Pippin. On the whole, I would rather have our job than Fatty's, waiting here till Black Riders come. Just wait till you are well into the forest, said Fredegar. You'll wish you were back here with me before this time tomorrow. It's no good arguing about it any more, said Mary. We've still got to tidy up and put the finishing touches to packing. Before we get to bed, I shall call you all before the break of day. When at last he had got to bed, Frodo could not sleep for some time. His legs ached. He was glad that he was riding in the morning. Eventually he fell into a vague dream in which he seemed to be looking out of a high window over a dark sea of tangled trees. Down below among the roots there was the sound of creatures crawling and snuffling. He felt sure they would smell him out sooner or later. Then he heard a noise in the distance. At first he thought it was a great wind coming over the leaves of the forest. Then he knew it was not leaves, but the sound of the sea far off, a sound he had never heard in waking life, though he had often troubled his dreams. Suddenly he found he was out in the open. There were no trees after all. He was on a dark heath. Heath? He was on a dark heath, and there was a strange salt smell in the air. Looking up, he saw before him a tall white tower standing alone on a high ridge. A great desire came over him to climb the tower and see the sea. He started to struggle up the ridge towards the tower, but suddenly a light came in the sky, and there was a noise of thunder. Chapter 6, The Old Forest. I was going to have a little sippy sip, a little breaky break, and a little vapey vape. Whoa. 45 minutes of reading. That's as long as I've gone so far. And we got to keep going. Mm-hmm. And I'll wait. Okay. And now we shall continue. Chapter 6. The Old Forest. Frodo woke suddenly. It was still dark in the room. Mary was standing there with a candle in one hand and banging the door with the other. "All right, what is it?" said Frodo, still shaken and bewildered. "What is it?" cried Mary. "It is time to get up. It is 4:30 and very foggy. Come on, Sam is already getting breakfast ready. Even Pippin is up, and I am just going to saddle the ponies. Fetch the one that is to be the baggage carrier. Wake that sluggard Fatty. At least he must get up and see us off." Soon after 6 o'clock, the 5 hobbits were ready to start. Fatty Bulger was still yawning. They stole quietly out of the house. Mary went in front, leading her laden pony, and took his way along the path that went through a spinney behind the house, and then cut across several fields. The leaves of the trees were glistening, and every twig was dripping. The grass was grey with cold dew. Everything was still, and faraway noises seemed near and clear, fowls chattering in the yard, someone closing the door of a distant house. In their shed they found the pony, sturdy little beasts of the kind loved by hobbits, not speedy, but good for a long day's work. They mounted, and soon they were riding off into the mist, which seemed to open reluctantly before them and close forbiddingly behind them. After riding for about an hour, slowly and without talking, they saw the hedge looming suddenly ahead. It was tall and netted over with silver cobwebs. "How are you going to get through this?" asked Fredegar. "Follow me," said Mary, "and you will see." He turned to the left along the hedge, and soon they came to a point where it bent inwards, running along the lip of a hollow. A cutting had been made at some distance from the hedge, and went sloping gently down into the ground. It had walls of brick at the sides, which rose steadily, until suddenly they arched over and formed a tunnel that dived deep under the hedge and came out in the hollow on the other side. Here Fatty Bulger halted. "Goodbye, Frodo," he said. "I wish you were not going into the forest. I only hope you will not need rescuing before the day is out. But good luck to you, today and every day." I kind of like that saying. Good luck to you, today and every day. That's nice. Meh. "If there are no worse things ahead than the old forest, I shall be lucky," said Frodo. "Tell Gandalf to hurry along the east road. We shall soon be back on it." Oh my god, that scared me. Welcome back, James. Whew. I hope the bingo went well. Now, where was I? That's twice I caught you. Yup. Hey. Where was I? "If there are no worse things ahead than the old forest, I shall be lucky," said Frodo. "Tell Gandalf to hurry along the east road. We shall soon be back on it and going as fast as we can." "Goodbye," they cried, and rode down the slope and disappeared from Fredegar's sight into the tunnel. "I come back poor, lol." Oh, I'm sorry, James. Are you coming back poor? It was dark and damp at the far end. It was closed by a gate of thick-set iron bars. Mary got down and unlocked the gate, and when they had all passed through, he pushed it again. It shut with a clang, and the lock clicked. The sound was ominous. "There," said Mary. "You have left the Shire and now outside and on the edge of the old forest. Depends on the bingo. Some use money." "Ah. I see. "Are the stories about it true?" said Pippin. "I don't know what stories you mean," Mary answered. "If you mean the old bogey stories fatty nurses used to tell him, about goblins and wolves and things of that sort, I should say no. At any rate, I don't believe them, but the forest is queer." "The forest is gay! Woo!" I always laugh whenever they say that something is queer. But I know what they mean. it's using the old way of saying queer. Although the old way of saying no, that's gay. Gay used to mean happy. I remember when I was reading the naughty books, they used to, because I had the old that was handed down by my grandmother. They had the old naughty books and they used the word gay a lot whenever a character was happy. And I loved it. Now where was I? Everything in it is very much alive, more aware of what is going on, so to speak, than things are in the Shire, and the trees do not like strangers. They watch you. They're usually content merely to watch you as long as daylight lasts and don't do much. Occasionally, the most unfriendly ones may drop a branch or stick a root out or grasp at you with a long trailer. But at night things can be most alarming, or so I am told. I've only once or twice been in here after dark, and then only near the hedge. I thought all the trees were whispering to each other, passing news and plots along in an unintelligible language, and the branches swayed and groped without any wind. This makes me think of the fact that in my law, I learned everything from the prattling pines. I learned everything from trees talking. Ah! I think that's a goblin. She's definitely not Jewish. This is a gremlin. I am a purple gremlin. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing good. Now where was I? I lost where I was. Wait, passing news and plots along in an unintelligible language. The branches swayed and groped without any wind. Good job, yep. I feel like I skipped on ahead. I just realized there's some things that I haven't seen. I'm rereading this bit. But at night things can be most alarming, or so I am told. I've only once or twice been in here after dark, and then only near the hedge. I thought all trees were whispering to each other, passing news and plots along in an unintelligible language. I skipped the whole sentence. And the branches swayed and groped without any wind. They do say the trees do actually move and can surround strangers and hem them in. In fact, long ago they attacked the hedge. They came and planted themselves right by it and leaned over it, but the hobbits came and chopped down hundreds of trees and made a great bonfire in the forest and burned all the ground in the long strip east of the hedge. After that, the trees gave up the attack, but they became very unfriendly. Is there a wide, bare space not far inside where the bonfire was made? Is it only the trees that are dangerous? Asked Pippin. There are various queer things living deep in the forest and on that far side, said Merry. Or at least I have heard so, but I have never seen any of them. But something makes paths. Whenever one comes inside, one finds open tracks, but they seem to shift and change from time to time in a queer fashion. Not far from this tunnel there is, or was for a long time, the beginning of a quite broad path leading to the bonfire glade. And then one or less in our direction, east and a little north. That is the path I am going to try and find. The hobbits now left the tunnel gate and rode across the wide hollow. On the far side was a faint path leading up to the floor of the forest, 100 yards or more beyond the hedge. But it had vanished as soon as it brought them under the trees. Looking back, they could see the dark line of the hedge through the stem of the trees that were already thick about them. Looking ahead, they could see only tree trunks of innumerable sizes and shapes, straight or bent, twisted, leaning, or squat or slender, smooth or gnarled and branched, and all the stems were green or grey with moss and slimy, shaggy growths. Merry alone seemed fairly cheerful. You had better lead on and find that path, Frodo said to him. Don't let us lose one another or forget which way the hedge lies. They picked among the trees, and the ponies plodded along, carefully avoiding the many writhing and interlacing roots. There was no undergrowth. The ground was rising steadily as they went forward. It seemed the trees became taller, darker, and thicker. There was no sound except an occasional drip of moisture falling through the still leaves. For the moment there was no whispering or movement among the branches. for they all got an uncomfortable feeling that they were being watched with disapproval, deepening to dislike and even I don't know how to say this word, enmity, enmity, Schmar. The feeling steadily grew until they found themselves looking up quickly or glancing back over their shoulders, as if they expected a sudden blow. I'm gonna have a little sip. Yeah, enmity. Yeah? Enmity? Like you're fucking with me with that last bit. Mm. I feel like I want to look up. Hold up. I'm writing some down a little book. I realize sometimes when doing the readings at the end of streams that I'll come across words when reading that I don't know. Usually when I read the books off stream, I'll get a moment to go look it up. You know? But I don't because I'm in the middle of reading on stream. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to write down words that I don't know. I know it seems to do with something with hating, but I like to learn new words, expand my vocabulary. No, how do I spell it? Yeah, enmity. Schmack. Congrats on the lost ducky. There we go. The feeling steadily grew until they found. I already read that. Blech. There was not as yet a sign of a path, and the trees seemed constantly to bar their way. Pippin suddenly felt that he could not bear it any longer, and without warning let out a shout. Oi, oi, he cried. I'm not going to do anything. Just let me pass through, will you? The others halted, startled, but the cry fell as if muffled by a heavy curtain. There was no echo or answer, though the wood seemed to become more crowded and more watchful than before. I should not shout if I were you, said Merry. It does more harm than good. Frodo began to wonder if it was possible to find a way through and if he had been right to make the others come into his abominable wood. Merry was looking from side to side and seemed already uncertain which way to go. Pippin noticed it. It has not taken you long to lose us, he said, but at that moment, Merry gave a whistle of relief and pointed ahead. Thank you for the pet, Reaper. Hello, how you doing? Well, he said. These trees do shift. There is the bonfire glade in front of us, or I hope so. But the path to it seems to have moved away. Dang it. Let me have a sip of water. The light grew clearer as they went forward. Suddenly they came out of all the trees and found themselves in a wide circular space. Have you met my friend Hogloom? No, I have not. Suddenly they came out of the trees and found themselves in a wide circular space. There was a sky above them, blue and clear to their surprise, for down under the forest roof they had not been able to see the rising morning and lifting of the mist. The sun was not, however, high enough yet to shine down into the clearing, though its light was on the treetops. The leaves were all thicker and greener about the edges of the glade, enclosing it with an almost solid wall. No tree grew there, only rough grass and many tall plants, stalky and faded. Hemlocks and wood parsley fireweed seeding into fluffy ashes and rampant nettles and thistles. A dreary place, but it seemed a charming and cheerful garden after the close forest. The hobbits felt encouraged and looked up hopefully at the broadening daylight in the sky. At the far side of the glade there was a break in the wall of trees and a clear path behind it. They could see it running onto the wood, wide in places and open above. Though every now and again the trees drew in and overshadowed it with their dark boughs. Up this path they rode, they were still climbing gently, but they now went much quicker, with a better heart, for it seemed to them that the forest had relented and was going to let them pass unhindered after all. But after a while the air began to get hot and stuffy. The trees drew close again on either side and they could no longer see far ahead. Now, stronger than they ever felt again, the ill will of the wood pressing on them, so silent was it that the fall of their ponies' hooves, rustling on dead leaves and occasionally stumbling on hidden roots, seemed to thud in their ears. Frodo tried to sing a song to encourage them, but his voice sank to a murmur. All wanderers in the shadowed land, despair not, for though dark they stand. All woods there must be at the end at last, and see the open sun go past. The setting sun, the rising sun, the day's end, or the day begun. For east or west all woods must fail. Fail. Even as he said the word, his voice faded into silence. The air seemed heavy and the making of woods worrisome. Just behind them, a large branch fell from an old overhanging tree with a crash into the path. The tree seemed to close in behind them. They do not like all about that about ending and failing, said Mary. I should not sing any more at present. Wait till we get the edge, and then we'll turn and give them a rousing chorus. He spoke cheerfully, and if he felt any great anxiety, he did not show it. The others did not answer. They were depressed. A heavy weight was settling steadily on Frodo's heart, and he regretted now with every step forward that he had ever thought of challenging the menace of the trees. He was indeed just about to stop and propose going back if that was still possible, when things took a new turn. The path stopped climbing and became for a while nearly level. The dark trees drew aside, and ahead they could see the path going almost straight ahead. Before them, some distance off, there stood a green hilltop, treeless. Rising like a bold head out of the encircling wood, the path seemed to be making directly for it. I have a sip of my cappuccino. Splendid. Maybe a little vape. They now hurried forward again, delighted with the thought of climbing out for a while above the roof of the forest. The path dipped and then again began to climb upwards, leading them at last to the front of the steep hillside. There it left the trees and faded into the turf. The woods stood all round the hill like the thick hair that ended sharply in a circle round a shaven crown. The hobbits led their ponies up, winding round and round until they reached the top. There they stood and gazed about them. The air was gleaming and sunlit but hazy, and they could not see any great distance. Near at the hand the mist was now almost gone, though here and there it lay in hollows of the wood, and to the south of them, out of the deep fold cutting right across the forest, the fog still rose like steam or wisps of white smoke. That, said Merry, pointing with his hand, that is the line of the Withy window. It comes down out of the downs and flows southwest through the mists of the forest to join the Brandywine below Haysend. We don't want to go that way. The Withy window valley is said to be the queerest part of the whole wood, the center from where all the queerness comes, as it were. Bleh. Bleh, bleh, bleh. Sorry, it still makes me laugh. The center from which all queerness comes. Ah. The others looked in the direction that Mary pointed, but they could see little but mists over the damp and deep-cut valley, and beyond it the southern half of the forest faded from view. The sun on the hilltop was now getting hot. It must have been about 11 o'clock, but the autumn haze still prevented them from seeing much in other directions. In the west they could not make out either the line of the hedge or the valley of the Brandywine behind it. Northward, where they looked most hopefully, they could see nothing but might be the line of the great east road for which they were making. They were on the island in a sea of trees, and the horizon was veiled. On the southeastern side of the ground fell very steeply, as if the slopes of the hill were continued far down under the trees, like island shores that really are the sides of a mountain rising out of deep waters. They sat on the green edge and looked over the woods below them while they ate their midday meal. As the sun rose and passed noon, they glimpsed far off into the east the grey-green lines of the downs that lay beyond the old forest on that side. That cheered them greatly. Ooh, my eyes are getting blurry. That cheered them greatly, for it was good to see a sight of anything beyond the wood's borders, though they did not mean to go that way. If they could help it, the Barrow Downs had a sinister reputation, a hobbit legend as the forest itself. I might put my glasses on real quick. Schmer. I probably should have started with my glasses on. Yee. Good job. Yeah, it's a little silly. Just a little silly with it. Oh, the fire sound is so calming. This is what I put on to go to sleep with at night. I can't sleep in silence no more. I got a dot on my glasses. Ew, go away. Shoo. Big on you. Okay, that's clean enough. There you go. Nice and cozy. Okay, now where was I? At length they made up their minds to go on again. The path that had brought them to the hill reappeared on the northward side, but they had not followed it far before they became aware that it was bending steadily to the right. Soon it began to descend rapidly, and they guessed that it must actually be heading towards the Withy Window Valley, not at all the direction they wished to take. After some direct discussion, they decided to leave this misleading path, and strike northward. For although they had not been able to see it from the hilltop, the road must lie that way, and it could not be many miles off. Also northward, and to the left of the path, the land seemed to be drier and more open. Climbing up to the slopes, where the trees were thinner and pines and firs replaced the oaks and ashes and other strange and nameless trees of the denser wood. At first the choice seemed to be good. They got along at fair speed, though whenever they got a glimpse of the sun in an open glade, they seemed unaccountably to have veered eastwards. But after a time the trees began to close in again, just where they had appeared from a distance to be thinner and less tangled. Then deep folds in the ground were discovered unexpectedly, like the ruts of great giant wheels, or wide moats and sunken roads long disused and choked with brambles. These lay usually right across the line of the march, and they could be crossed by scrambling down and out again, which was troublesome and difficult with their ponies. Each time they climbed down, they found the hollow filled with thick bushes and matted undergrowth, which somehow would not yield to the left, but only gave way when they turned to the right, and they had to go some distance along the bottom before they could find a way up the further bank. Each time they clambered out the trees seemed deeper and darker, and always to the left and upwards it was most difficult to find a way, and they were forced to the right and downwards. After an hour or two they had lost all clear sense of direction, though they knew well enough that they had long ceased to go northward at all. They were being headed off and were simply following a course chosen for them, eastwards and southwards into the heart of the forest and not out of it. The afternoon was wearing away when they scrambled and stumbled into a fold that was wider and deeper than any they had yet met. It was so steep and overhung that it proved impossible to climb out of it again, either forwards or backwards, without leaving their ponies and their baggage behind. All they could do was follow the fold downwards. The ground grew soft and in places boggy. Springs appeared in the bank, and soon they found themselves following a brook that trickled and babbled through a weedy bed. Then again the ground began to fall rapidly, and the brook, growing strong and noisy, flowed and leapt swiftly downhill. They were in a deep, dim-lit gully overarched by trees high above them. After stumbling along for some way along the stream, they came quite suddenly out of the gloom, as if through a gate they saw the sunlight before them. Coming to the opening, they found that they had made their way down through a cleft in a high, steep bank, almost a cliff. At its feet was a wide space of grass and reeds, and in the distance could be glimpsed another bank almost as steep. A golden afternoon of late sunshine lay warm and drowsy upon the hidden land between them. In the midst of it all, there wound lazily a dark river of brown water, bordered with ancient willows, arched over with willows, blocked with fallen willows, and flecked with thousands of faded willow leaves. The air was thick with them, fluttering yellow from the branches, for there was a warm and gentle breeze blowing in the valley, and the reeds were rustling, and the willow boughs were creaking. "But now I have at least some notion of where we are," said Mary. "We have come almost in the opposite direction to which we intended. This is the river Withy Window. I will go and explore." He passed out into the sunshine and disappeared into the long grasses. After a while he reappeared and reported there was fairly solid ground between the cliff foot and the river. In some places the firm turf went down to the water's edge. What's more, he said, there seems to be something like a footpath winding along on the side of the river. If we turn left and follow it, we shall be bound to come out on the east side of the forest eventually. "I dare say," said Pippin. "That is, if the track goes on so far and does not simply lead us into a bog and leave us there. Who made the track, do you suppose, and why? I am sure it was not for our benefit. I'm getting very suspicious of this forest and everything in it, and I begin to believe all the stories about it. And have you any idea how far eastward we should have to go?" Let me have a little sip of my cappuccino. Blah, 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 blah. "No," said Mary, "I haven't. And I don't know in the least how far down the Withy Window we are, or who could possibly come here often enough to make a path along it, but there's no other way out that I can see or think of." There being nothing else for it, they filed out, and Mary led them to the path that he had discovered. Everywhere the reeds and grasses were lush and tall in places far above their heads, but once found, the path was easy to follow as it turned and twisted, picking out the sounder ground among the bogs and pools. Here and there it passed over the rills, running down gullies into the Withy Window out of the higher forest lands, and at these points there were tree trunks or bundles of brushwood laid carefully across. The hobbits began to feel very hot. There were armies of flies of all kinds buzzing around their ears, and the afternoon sun was burning on their backs. At last they came suddenly into a thin shade. Great grey branches reached across the path. Each step forward became more reluctant than the last. Sleepiness seemed to be creeping out of the ground and up their legs and falling softly out of their air upon their heads and ears. Frodo felt his chin go down and his head nod. Just in front of him, Pippin fell forward onto his knees. Frodo halted. "It's no good," he heard Merry saying. "We can't go another step without rest. Must have a nap. It's cool under the willows. Less flies." Frodo did not like the sound of this. "Come on," he cried. "We can't have a nap yet. We must go clear of the forest first." But the others were too far gone to care. Beside them, Sam stood yawning and blinking stupidly. Suddenly Frodo himself felt sleep overwhelming him. His head swarmed. There now seemed hardly a sound in the air. The flies had stopped buzzing, only a gentle noise on the edge of the hearing, a soft fluttering as of a song half-whispered, seemed to stir in the boughs above. He lifted his heavy eyes and saw leaning over him a huge willow tree, old and hoary. Hoary? Enormous it looked, its sprawling branches going up like reaching arms with many long-fingered hands, its knotted and twisted trunks gaping in wide fissures that creaked faintly as the boughs moved. The leaves fluttering against the bright sky dazzled him, and he toppled over, lying where he fell upon the grass. Merry and Pippin dragged themselves forward and lay down with their backs to the willow trunk. Behind them, the great cracks gaped wide to receive them as the tree swayed and creaked. They looked up at the gray-yellow leaves moving softly against the light and singing. They shut their eyes, and then it seemed that they could almost hear words, cool words, saying something about water and sleep. They gave themselves up to the spell and fell fast asleep at the foot of the great gray willow. Frodo lay for a while, fighting with the sleep that was overpowering him. Then with an effort he struggled to his feet again. He felt a compelling desire for cool water. "Wait for me, Sam," he stammered. "Must bathe feet for a minute." Half in a dream, he wandered forward to the riverside of the tree, where great winding roots grew out into the stream, like gnarled dragon nets straining down to drink. He straddled one of these and patted his hot feet in the cool brown water, and there he too suddenly fell asleep with his back against the tree. Moggy in chat right now. I hope so. Hope it's nice and cozy. I also getting sleepy. Me. I'm gonna cross my legs a little more comfortable. There we go. Let me have some water. Splendid. Sam sat down and scratched his head and yawned like a cavern. Yawned like a cavern. He was worried. The afternoon was getting late, and he thought the sudden sleepiness uncanny. "There's more behind this than sun and warm air," he muttered to himself. "I don't like this great big tree. I don't trust it. Hark at it singing about sleep now. This won't do at all." Pulling himself to his feet and staggered off to see what had become of the ponies, he found that two had wandered on a good way along the path, and he had just caught them and brought them back towards the others, when he heard two noises, one loud and the other soft, but very clear. One was the splash of something heavy falling into the water. The other was a noise like the snick of a lock when a door quietly closes fast. He rushed back to the bank. Frodo was in the water close to the edge, and the great tree roots seemed to be over him, holding him down. But he was not struggling. Sam gripped him by the jacket and dragged him from under the root, and then with difficulty hauled him onto the bank. Almost at once he woke and coughed and spluttered. "Do you know, Sam," he said at length, "the beastly tree threw me in. I felt it. The big root just twisted round and tipped me in." "You were dreaming, I expect, Mr. Frodo," said Sam. "You shouldn't sit in such a place if you feel sleepy." What about the others, Frodo asked. "I wonder what sort of dreams they are having." They went round to the other side of the tree, and then Sam understood at the click that he had heard. Pippin had vanished. The crack by which he had laid himself had closed together so that not a chink could be seen. Merry was trapped. Another crack had closed about his waist. His legs lay outside, but the rest of him was inside a dark opening, the edges of which gripped like a pair of pincers. Frodo and Sam beat first upon the tree trunk where Pippin had lain. They then struggled frantically to pull open the jaws of the crack that held poor Merry. It was quite useless. I need me some more water. "What a foul thing to happen," cried Frodo wildly. "Why did we ever come into this dreadful forest? I wish we were all back at Creek Hollow." He kicked the tree with all his strength, heedless of his own feet. A hardly perceptible shiver ran through the stem and up into the branches. The leaves rustled and whispered with a sound now of faint, far-off laughter. "I suppose we haven't got an axe among our luggage, Mr. Frodo?" asked Sam. "I brought a little hatchet for chopping wood," said Frodo. "That one wouldn't be much use." "Wait a minute," cried Sam, struck by an idea suggested by firewood. "We might do something with fire." "We might," said Frodo doubtfully. "We might succeed in roasting Pippin alive inside." little stretch. Little stretch. They might try to hurt and frighten this tree to begin with, said Sam. Fiercely, if it don't let them go, I'll have it down. I'll have to gnaw at it. He ran to the ponies before long, came back with 2 tinder boxes and a hatchet. Quickly they gathered dry grass and leaves and bits of bark and made a pile of broken twigs and chopsticks. These they heaped against the trunk on the far side of the tree from the prisoners. As soon as Sam had struck a spark into the tinder, it kindled the dry grass, and a flurry of flame and smoke went up. The twigs crackled, little fingers of fire licked against the dry rind of the ancient tree and scorched it. A tremor ran through a whole willow. The leaves seemed to hiss above their heads with a sound of pain and anger. A loud scream came from Mary from far inside the tree. They heard Pippin give a muffled yell. Pull it out, cried Mary. He'll squeeze me in 2 if you don't. He says so. Who? What? Shouted Frodo. Rushing round to the other side of the tree. Put it out, begged Mary. The branches of the willow began to sway violently. There was a sound as of a wind rising and spreading outwards to the branches of all the other trees round about it. Though they had dropped a stone into the quiet slumber of the river valley, and set up ripples of anger that ran out over the whole forest. Sam kicked the little fire and stamped out the sparks, but Frodo, without any clear idea of why he did so, or what he hoped for, he ran along the path, crying, "Help! Help! Help!" It seemed to him that he could hardly hear the sound of his own shrill voice. It was blown away from him by the willow wind and drowned in a clamor of leaves as soon as the words left his mouth. He felt desperate, lost, and witless. Suddenly, oh my God, I know what's coming. I just accidentally read ahead. Eee. Suddenly he stopped. There was an answer, or so he thought, but it seemed to come from behind him. Away down the path further back into the forest, he turned around and listened. As soon there could be no doubt someone was singing a song. A deep, glad voice was singing carelessly and happily, but it was singing nonsense. Hey doll, merry doll, ring-a-dong dillo. Ring-a-dong, hop along, fa-la the willow. Tom-bomb, jolly Tom, Tom-bombadillo. I've heard of this character. We finally meet him. Half hopeful and half afraid of some new danger, Frodo and Sam now both stood still. Suddenly, out of the long string of nonsense words, or so they seemed, the voice rose up loud and clear and burst into the song. Hey come, merry doll, derry doll, my darling. Light goes the weather wind, any feathered starling. Down under the hill, shining in the sunlight, waiting on the doorstep for the cold starlight. There, my pretty lady is river woman's daughter, slender as the willow wand, clearer than the water. Oh, Tom Bombadil, water lilies bringing, come hopping home again, can you hear him singing? Hey, come, merry doll, derry doll, and merry-o. Goldberry, merry yellow berry-o. Poor old willow man, you tuck your roots away. Tom's in a hurry now, evening will follow day. Tom's going home again, water lilies bringing. Hey, come, it's so hard, I'm getting stumbling over this. Hey, come, derry doll, can you hear me singing? Frodo and Sam stood as if enchanted. The wind puffed out, the leaves hung silently again on the stiff branches. There was another burst of song, and then suddenly hopping and dancing along the path. There appeared above the reeds an old battered hat with a tall crown and a long blue feather stuck in a band. With another hop and a bound there came into view a man, or so it seemed. At any rate, he was too large and heavy for a hobbit, if not quite tall enough for one of the big people. Though he made noise enough for one stumping along with great yellow boots on his thick legs, and charging through grass and rushes like a cow going down to drink. He had a blue coat and a long brown beard. His eyes were blue and bright. His face was red as a ripe apple, but creased into 100 wrinkles of laughter. In his hands he carried on a large leaf, as on a tray a small pile of water of white water lilies. Help! Cried Frodo and Sam, running towards him with their hands stretched out. Whoa, whoa, steady there, cried the old man, holding up one hand, and they stopped short as if they had been struck stiff. Now, my little fellows, where be you a going to? Puffing like a bellows. What's the matter here, then? Do you know who I am? I'm Tom Bombadil. Now tell me what's your trouble. Tom's in a hurry now. Don't you crush my lilies. My friends are caught in the willow tree, cried Frodo breathlessly. Master Merry's being squeezed in a crack, cried Sam. What? Shouted Tom Bombadil. Leaping up into the air, Old Man Willow, naught worse than that, eh? That can soon be mended. I know the tune for him. Old Grey Willow Man, I'll freeze the marrow code. If he don't behave himself, I'll sing his roots off. I'll sing a wind up and blow leaf and branch away, Old Man Willow. Setting down his lilies carefully on the grass, he ran to the tree. There, I'm glad you're cozy, Reaper. There he saw Mary's feet still sticking out. The rest had already been drawn further inside. Tom put his mouth to the crack and began singing into it in a low voice. They could not catch the words, but evidently Mary was aroused. I know they don't mean it like that, but I'm dumb as hell. Hold on a second. Take a little break for myself. Bum, 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 bum. A little sip of water. Okay. Now I continue. His legs began to kick. Tom sprang away and, breaking off a hanging branch, smote the side of the willow with it. You let them out again, Old Man Willow, he said. What be you a-thinking of? You should not be waking. Eat earth, dig deep, drink water. Go to sleep. Bombadil was talking. He then seized Mary's feet and drew him out of the suddenly widening crack. There was a tearing creak, and the other crack split open, and out of it Pippin sprang as if he had been kicked. Then, with a loud snap, both cracks closed fast again. A shadow ran through the tree from root to tip, and complete silence fell. Thank you, said the hobbits, one after the other. Tom Bombadil burst out laughing. Well, my little fellows, said he, stooping so that he peered into their faces, you shall come home with me. The table's all laden with yellow cream, honeycomb, and white bread and butter. Goldberry is waiting. Time enough for questions around the supper table. You follow after me as quick as you are able. With that he picked up his lilies, and then with a beckoning wave of his hand went hopping and dancing along the path eastward, still singing loudly and nonsensically. Too surprised and too relieved to talk, the hobbits followed after him as fast as they could, but that was not fast enough. Tom soon disappeared in front of them, and the noise of his singing got fainter and further away. Suddenly his voice came floating back to them in a loud halloo. Hop along, my little friends, up the withy window. Tom's going on ahead for candles for to kindle. Down west sinks to the sun, soon you will be groping. When night shadows fall, then the door will be open. Out of the window panes light will twinkle yellow. Fear no elder black, heed no hoary willow. Fear neither root nor bough, Tom goes on before you. Hey now, merry doll, we'll be waiting for you. After that the hobbits heard no more. Almost at once the sun seemed to sink into the trees behind them. They thought of the slanting light of evening glittering on the Brandywine River, and on the windows of Buckleberry beginning to gleam with hundreds of lights. Great shadows fell across them, trunks and branches of trees hung dark and threatening over the path. The white mists began to rise and curl on the surface of the river and stray about the roots of the trees upon its borders. Out of the very ground at the feet a shadowy steam arose and mingled with swiftly falling dusk. It became difficult to follow the path, and they were very tired. The legs seemed leaden. Bleh. Strange furtive noises rang among the bushes and reeds on either side of them. and if they looked up to the pale sky, they caught sight of the queer, gnarled, and knobbly faces that gloomed dark against the twilight, and leered down at them from the high bank at the edges of the wood. They began to feel that all this country was unreal, and they were stumbling through an ominous dream that led to no awakening. Let me have some water. Just as they felt their feet slowing down to a steady still, they noticed that the ground was gently rising. The water began to murmur. In the darkness, they caught the white glimmer of foam, where the river flowed over a short fall, when suddenly the trees came to an end and the mists were left behind. They stepped out from the forest and found a wide sweep of grass welling up before them. The river was now small and swift, was leaping merrily down to meet them, glinting here and there in the light of the stars. Oh gosh, I need a cough, which were already shining in the sky. Give me one moment. Just had a little cough. But I am good. I am good, good, good. The grass under their feet was smooth and short, as if it had been mowed or shaven. The eaves of the forest behind them were clipped and trim as a hedge. The path was now plain before them, well tended and bordered with stone. It wound up onto the top of a grassy knoll, now grey under the pale starry night. And there, still high above them on a further slope, they saw the twinkling lights of a house. Down again the path went, and then up again, up a long, smooth hillside of turf, towards the light. Suddenly a wide yellow beam flowed out brightly from a door and was open. There was Tom Bombadil's house before them, up, down, under the underhill. Behind it a steep shoulder of land lay grey and bare. Beyond that, dark shapes of the barrow down stalked away into the eastern night. They all hurried forward, hobbits and ponies. Already half their weariness and all their fears had fallen from them. Hey, come, merry dole, rolled out the song to greet them. Hey, come, derry doll, hop along, my hearties. Hobbits, ponies all, we are fond of parties. Now let the fun begin, let us sing together. Then another clear voice, as young and as ancient as a spring, like the song of a glad water flowing down into the night from a bright morning into the hills, came falling like silver to meet them. Now let the song begin, let us sing together, of sun, stars, moon, and mist, rain, and cloudy weather. Light on the budding leaf, dew on the feather, wind on the open hill, bells on the heather. Reeds by the shady pool, lilies on the water, old Tom Bombadil and the river daughter. And with that song the hobbits stood up upon the threshold, and a golden light was all about them. Whoa! Whoa, whoa, whoa. Chapter 7, In the House of Tom Bombadil. And I shall have a little break. Maybe a little call. Oh, 1 hour and 30 minutes. Wait. Got an hour and 30 minutes to go. Shmer, shmer, shmer. I have a little sip. Moisturize these lips. Halfway there. I know. I hope you guys are still enjoying. I hope it's still cozy and relaxing. It's kind of nice, actually, just doing a stream like this. I wish my voice wouldn't strain after like an hour. I think that's why I'm just coughing. Maybe I'll spray a little coating on my throat real quick, since I'm not used to this. Give me 1 moment. Whew, that already seems to be helping. Mm-hmm. Trying to make sure I give myself breaks when I feel like my voice has been a little strained. Hey, I commend the people who do this often. And part of me is really like, I wouldn't mind doing this like once a month. A little stream dedicated to reading. It's a very relaxing one. You're doing great so far. Thank you, Reaper. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Okay. One more sip of water and we'll get back into it. Still not halfway in the book yet. Well, then again, I started on chapter 7. We're nearing there. Okay. Chapter 7. In the House of Tom Bombadil. The four hobbits stepped over the wide stone threshold and stood still, blinking. They were in a long, low room filled with the light of lamps swinging from the beams of the roof, and on the table of dark polished wood stood many candles, tall and yellow, burning brightly. And in a chair at the far side of the room, facing the outer door, sat a woman. Her long yellow hair rippled down her shoulders. Her gown was green as young reeds, and shot with silver like beads of dew. Her belt was of gold, shaped like a chain of flag lilies set with her pale blue eyes of forget-me-nots. About her feet, in wide vessels of green and brown earthenware, white water lilies were floating, so that she seemed to be enthroned in the midst of a pool. "Enter, good guests," she said, and as she spoke they knew that it was her clear voice that they heard singing. They came a few timid steps further into the room and began to bow low, feeling strangely surprised and awkward like little folk that, knocking at a cottage door to beg for a drink of water, have been answered by a fair young elf queen clad in living flowers. But before they could say anything, she sprang lightly up and over the lily bowls and ran laughing towards them, and as she ran her gown rustled softly like the wind in flowering borders of a river. "Come, dear folk," she said, taking Frodo by the hand. "Laugh and be merry. I am Goldberry, daughter of the river." Then lightly she passed them, and closing the door, she turned her back to it. With her white arms spread out across, "Let us shut out the night," she said, "for you are still afraid, perhaps, of mist and tree shadows and deep water and untamed things. Fear nothing, for tonight you are under roof of Tom Bombadil." The hobbits looked at her in wonder. She looked at each of them and smiled. "Fair Lady Goldberry," said Frodo at last, feeling his heart moved with joy that he did not understand. He stood as he had at times stood, enchanted by fair elven voices, but the spell was now laid upon him was different. Less keen and lofty was the delight, but deeper and nearer to mortal hearts, marvelous yet not strange. "Fair Lady Goldberry," he said again, "now the joy that was hid in the songs we heard is made plain to me. O slender as a willow wand, O clearer than clear water, O reed by a living pool, fair river daughter. O springtime and summertime and spring again after, O wind on the water fill, and the leaves' laughter." Suddenly he stopped and stammered, overcome with surprise to hear himself say such things, but Goldberry laughed. "Welcome," she said. "I had not heard that folk of the Shire were so sweet-tongued, but I see you are an elf friend. The light in your eyes and the ring in your voice tells it. This is a merry meeting. Sit now and wait for the master of the house. He will not be long. He is tending to your tired beasts. The hobbit sat down gladly in low-rushed seats, while Goldberry busied herself about the table, and their eyes followed her, for the slender grace of her movement filled them with quiet delight. From somewhere behind the house came the sound of singing. Every now and again they caught among "Merry a dory doll" and "Merry doll" and a "ring-a-ding-dillo" the repeated words. Old Tom Bombadil was a merry fellow. Bright blue is his jacket, and his boots are yellow. "Fair lady," said Frodo again after a while, "tell me, if my asking does not seem foolish, who is Tom Bombadil?" "He is," said Goldberry, staring her swift movements and smiling. Frodo looked at her questioningly. "He is as you have seen him," she said in answer to his look. "He is the master of the wood, water, and hill." "Then all this strange land belongs to him?" "No, indeed," she answered, and her smile faded. "That would indeed be a burden," she added in a low voice as if to herself. "The trees and the grasses and all things growing and living in the land belong each to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom walking in the forest, wading in the water, leaping on the hilltops under light and shadow. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master." A door opened and in came Tom Bombadil. He had now no hat and his thick brown hair was crowned with autumn leaves. He laughed and going to Goldberry took her hand. "Here is my pretty lady," he said, bowing to the hobbits. "Here's my Goldberry clothed in all in silver green with flowers in her girdle. Is the table laden? I see yellow cream and honeycomb and white bread and the butter, milk, cheese, and green herbs and ripe berries gathered. Is that enough for us? Is the supper ready?" "It is," said Goldberry, "but the guests perhaps are not." Tom clapped his hands and cried, "Tom, Tom, your guests are tired, and you had near forgotten. Come now, my merry friends, and Tom will refresh you. You shall clean grimy hands and wash your weary faces, cast off your muddy cloaks and comb out your tangles." He opened the door and they followed him down a short passage and round a sharp turn. They came to a low room with a sloping roof, a penthouse it seemed, built on the north end of the house. Its walls and yellow curtains, the floor. I skipped the sentence again. Its walls were of clean stone, but they were mostly covered with green hanging mats and yellow curtains. The floor was flagged and strewn with fresh green rushes. There were 4 deep mattresses, each piled with white blankets, laid on the floor along one side. Against the opposite wall was a long bench laden with wide earthenware basins, and behind it stood brown ewers, filled with water, some cold, some steaming hot. There was soft green slippers set ready beside each bed. Let me have another sip. Move that there. Wee, little stretch. Before long, washed and refreshed, the hobbits were seated at the table, 2 on each side, while at either end sat Goldberry and the master. It was a long and merry meal. Though the hobbits ate as only famished hobbits can eat, there was no lack. The drink in the drinking bowl seemed to be clear cold water, yet it went to their hearts like wine and set free their voices. The guests became suddenly aware they were singing merrily, as if it was easier and more natural than talking. At last, Tom and Goldberry rose and cleared the table swiftly. The guests were commanded to sit quiet and were set in chairs, each with a footstool to his tired feet. There was a fire in the wide hearth before them, and it was burning with a sweet smell as if it was built of apple wood. When everything was set in order, all the lights in the room were put out, except 1 lamp and a pair of candles at each end of the chimney shelf. Then Goldberry came and stood before them, holding a candle, and she wished them each a good night and deep sleep. "Have peace now," she said, "until morning. Heed no nightly noises, for nothing passes door and window here save moonlight and starlight and the wind off the hilltop." "Good night." She passed out of the room with a glimmer and a rustle. The sound of her footsteps were like a stream falling gently away downhill over cool stones in the quiet of the night. Tom sat on a while beside them in silence while each of them tried to muster the courage to ask one of the many questions he had meant to ask at supper. Sleep gathered on their eyelids. At last Frodo spoke. "Did you hear me calling, master, or was it just chance that brought you at that moment?" Tom stirred like a man shaken out of a pleasant dream. What?" said he. "Did I hear your calling? Nay, I did not hear. I was busy singing. Just chance brought me then. If chance you call it. It was no plan of mine. Though I was waiting for you. We heard news of you and learned that you were wandering. We guessed you come ere long to the water or pass the lead that way down to Withy Windle. Old Grey Willow Man, he's a mighty singer, and it's hard for little folk to escape his cunning mazes. But Tom had an errand there that he did not hinder. Tom nodded as if Tom nodded as if sleep was taking him again, but he went on in a soft singing voice. I need some water. There we go. I had an errand there gathering water lilies, green leaves and lily white, to please my pretty lady. The last ere the year's end to keep him from the winter, to flower by her pretty feet till the snows are melted. Each year at summer's end I go to find them for her, in a wide pool, deep and clear, far down Withy Window. There they open first in spring, and there they linger latest. By that pool long ago I found the river daughter, fair young Goldberry sitting in the rushes. Sweet was her singing then, and her heart was beating. He opened his eyes and looked at them with a sudden glint of blue. And that proved well for you, for now I shall no longer go down deep again along the forest water. Not while the year is old, nor shall I be passing Old Man Willow's house this side of the springtime. Not till the merry spring, when the river daughter dances down the withy path to bathe in the water. He fell silent again, but Frodo could not help asking one more question, the one he most desired to have answered. Tell us, master, he said, about the Willow Man. What is he? I've never heard of him before. No, don't, said Merry and Pippin together, sitting suddenly upright. Not now, not until the morning. That is right, said the old man. Now's the time for resting. Some things are ill to hear when the world's in shadow. Sleep till the morning light, rest on the pillow. Heed no nightly noise, fear no grey willow. And with that he took down the lamp and blew it out, and grasped a candle in either hand, he led them out of the room. The mattresses and pillows were soft as down, and the blankets were of white wool. They had hardly laid themselves on the deep beds, and drawn the light covers over them before they were asleep. Stretch, stretch. I'm getting sleepy myself. Hey. I'll rest for myself. Okay. In the dead night, Frodo lay in a dream without light. Then he saw the young moon rising. Under its thin light there loomed before him a black wall of rock, pierced by a dark arch like a great gate. It seemed to Frodo that he was lifted up, and passing over he saw that rock wall was a circle of hills, that within it was a plain, and in the midst of the plain stood a in midst of the plain, I'm lost, stood a pinnacle of stone, like a vast tower, but not made by hands. On it stood the figure of a man. The moon, as it rose, seemed to hang for a moment before his head glistened, and his white hair as the wind stirred it. Let me take a moment. Okay, where am I? Me. In the midst of the plain stood a pinnacle of stone, like a vast tower not made by hands. On top of it stood the figure of a man. The moon, as it rose, seemed to hang for a moment above his head and glisten in his white hair as the wind stirred it. Up from the dark plain below came the crying of fell voices and the howling of many wolves. Suddenly a shadow, like the shape of great wings, passed across the moon. The figure lifted his arms, and a light flashed from the staff that he wielded. A mighty eagle swept down and bore him away, and the voices wailed and the wolves yammered. There was a noise like a strong wind blowing, and on it was borne the sound of hoofs galloping, galloping and galloping from the east. Black riders, thought Frodo as he wakened, with the sound of hooves still echoing in his mind. He wondered if he would ever again have the courage to leave the safety of those stone walls. He lay motionless, still listening, but it was all now silent. And at last he turned and fell asleep again, or wandered into some other, unremembered dream. I feel like the dreams are like foreshadowing, you know? At his side, Pippin lay dreaming pleasantly, but a change came over his dreams, and he turned and groaned. Suddenly he woke, or he thought he had waked, and yet still heard in the darkness the sound that disturbed his dream. Tip, tap, squeak. The noise was like branches fretting in the wind. Twig fingers scraping walls and window. Creak, creak, creak. He wondered if there were willow trees close to the house, and then suddenly he had a dreadful feeling that he was not in an ordinary house at all. But inside the willow, and listening to that horrible dry creaking voice laughing at him again, he sat up and felt the soft pillows yield to his hands, and he lay down again relieved. He seemed to hear the echo of words in his ears. Fear nothing, have peace until morning, heed no nightly noises. Then he went to sleep again. It was the sound of water that Merry heard falling into his quiet sleep. The water streaming down gently and then spreading irresistibly all round the house into a dark, shoreless pool. It gurgled under the walls and was rising slowly but surely. I shall be drowned, he thought. It will find its way in, and then I shall drown. He felt that he was lying in a soft, slimy bog, and springing up, he set his foot on the corner of a cold, hard flagstone. You're so sleepy. So am I. I'm not gonna lie, Sticks. Yeah. Then he remembered where he was and lay down again. He seemed to hear or remember hearing nothing past his doors or windows save moonlight and starlight and the wind off the hilltop. A little breath of sweet air moved the curtain. He breathed deep and fell asleep again. As far as he could remember, Sam slept through the night in deep content, if logs are contented. I'm gonna have a little sip of something. So I'm having to take breaks more. He's getting a little more strained. Nearly 2 hours though. Can you believe? They woke up all four at once in the morning light. Tom was moving about the room, whistling like a starling. When he heard them stir, he clapped his hands and cried, "Hey, come, merry doll, derry doll, my hearties." He drew back the yellow curtains, and the hobbit saw that these had covered the windows at either end of the room, one looking east and the other looking west. They leapt up refreshed. Frodo ran to the eastern window and found himself looking into a kitchen garden grey with dew. He had half expected to see turf right up to the walls, turf all pocked with hoof prints. Actually, his view was screened by a tall line of beams on poles, but above and far beyond them, the grey top of the hill loomed up against the sunrise. "You're doing great, thanks, Sen." It was a pale morning in the east behind long clouds like lines of soiled wool, stained red at the edges. Lay glimmering deeps of yellow. The sky spoke of rain to come, but the light was broadening quickly, and the red flowers on the beans began to glow against the wet green leaves. I'm not gonna lie, reading this book just makes you want to go grow things, grow vegetables, or flowers. It makes gardening seem very nice. Tolkien is such a way with words. Pippin looked out of the western window down into the pool of mist. The forest was hidden under a fog. It was like looking down onto a sloping cloud roof from above. There was a fold or channel where the mist was broken into many plumes and billows, the valley of the Withy window. The stream ran down the hill on the left and vanished into the white shadows. Near at hand was a flower garden and a clipped hedge silver knitted. Beyond that, grey shaven grass pale with dewdrops. There was no willow tree to be seen. "Good morning, merry friends," cried Tom, opening the eastern window wide. A cool air flowed in. It had a rainy smell. Sun won't show a face much today, I'm thinking. I've been walking wide, leaping on the hilltops since the grey dawn began, nosing wind and weather, wet grass underfoot, wet sky above me. I awaken Goldberry singing under the window, but naught wakes hobbit folk in the early morning. In the night little folk wake up in the darkness and sleep after light has come. Ring-a-ding-dillo, wake now, my merry friends. Forget the nightly noises, ring-a-ding-dillo, dell. Derry-dell, my hearties. If you come soon, you'll find breakfast on the table. If you come late, you'll get grass and rainwater. Needless to say, not that Tom's threat sounded very serious, the hobbits came soon and left the table late, and only when it was beginning to look rather empty. Neither Tom nor Goldberry were there. Tom could be heard about the house, clattering the kitchen and up and down the stairs and singing here and there. The room looked westward over the mist-clouded valley, and the window was open. Water dripped down from the thatched eaves above. Before they had finished breakfast, the clouds had joined into an unbroken roof, and a straight grey rain came softly and steadily down. Beneath its deep curtain, the forests were completely veiled. As they looked out of the window, there came falling gently as if it was flowing down the rain out of the sky, the clear voice of Goldberry singing up above them. They could hear few words, but it seemed plain to them that the song was a rain song, as sweet as showers on dry hills that told the tale of a river, from the spring in the highlands to the sea far below. The hobbits listened with delight, and Frodo was glad in his heart, and blessed the kindly weather, because it delayed them from departing. The thought of going had been heavy upon him from the moment he awoke, but he guessed now that they would not go further that day. I'm gonna have a sip of water. Wait. I'm sitting up very straight, and I slowly made my back sore. Hey. Okay. Let's continue. The upper wind settled in the west, and deeper and wetter clouds rolled up to spill their laden rain on the bare heads of the downs. Nothing could be seen all around the house but falling water. Frodo stood near the open door and watched the white chalky path turn into a little river of milk go bubbling away down into the valley. Tom Bombadil came trotting round the corner of the house, waving his arms as if he was warding off the rain, and indeed when he sprang over the threshold he seemed quite dry, except for his boots. These he took off and put in the chimney corner. Then he sat in the largest chair and called the hobbits to gather round him. This is Goldberry's washing day, he said, and our autumn cleaning too wet for hobbit folk. Let them rest while they are able. It's a good day for long tales, for questions and for answers, so Tom will start talking. He then told them many remarkable stories, sometimes as if speaking to himself, sometimes looking at them suddenly with a bright blue eye under his deep brows. Often his voice would... What did I just hear? Must be from the video. That scared me. It was a different noise. Now where am I? I lost myself. Thank you for the pet. Often his voice would turn into song, and he would get out of his chair and dance about. He told them tales of bees and flowers, the ways of trees, and the strange creatures of the forest, about the evil things and the good things. Things friendly and things unfriendly, cruel things and kind things, and secrets hidden under brambles. As they listened, they began to understand the lives of the forest apart from themselves, indeed to feel themselves as strangers where all the other things were at home. Moving constantly in and out of his talk was Old Man Willow, and Frodo learned now enough to content him. Indeed, more than enough, for it was not comfortable lore. Tom's words laid bare the hearts of the trees and their thoughts, which were often dark and strange, and filled with hatred of things that go free upon the earth, gnawing and biting, breaking, hacking, burning, destroyers and usurpers. It was not called the Old Forest without reason. for it was indeed ancient, a survivor of vast forgotten woods, and in it there lived yet, aging no quicker than the hills. The fathers of trees. Remembering times when they were the lords, the countless years had filled them with pride and rooted wisdom, and with malice. But none were more dangerous than the great willow. His heart was rotten, but his strength was green, and he was cunning. And the master of the winds and his song and thought ran through the woods on both sides of the river. His grey, thirsty spirit drew power out of the earth and spread like fine root threads in the ground, and invisible twig fingers in the air, till it had under its dominion nearly all the trees of the forest from the hedge to the downs. Suddenly Tom's talk left the woods and went leaping up the young stream, over bubbling waterfalls, over let me have a sip of water. My throat is straining. No. There we go. Suddenly Tom's talk left the woods and went leaping up the young stream, over bubbling waterfalls and over pebbles and worn rocks and among small flowers and close grass and wet crannies. Wandering at last up to the downs, they heard of the great barrows, and the green mounds and the stone rings upon the hills and in the hollows among the hills. Sheep were bleating in the flocks, green walls and white walls rose. There were fortresses on the heights. Kings of little kingdoms fought together, and the young sun shone like fire in the red metal of the new and greedy swords. There were victory and defeat, and the towers fell. Fortresses were burned, and flames went up into the sky. Gold piled on the biers of dead kings and queens, and mounds covered them, and the stone doors were shut, and the grass grew over them. Sheep walked for a while, biting the grass, but soon the hills were empty again. A shadow came out of the dark places far away, and the bones were stirred in the mounds. Barrow wights walked in the hollow places with a clink of rings on cold fingers and the gold chains in the wind. Stone rings grinned out of the hot ground like broken teeth in the moonlight. Oh, why is my thumb so cold? Ducky, thank you for the raid. I appreciate it. How you doing? Welcome to the chill reading. Ike, how you doing? We still going. We still reading. I hope your stream was fun. I was lurking a good lot of the time. Oh, I mean, wait, what is this? Red duck fire. She did 2 hours of reading, 1 left. I know. Whee! Hope you're doing well, Key. And I hope you guys had a good time on the stream. Shmee shmee. But yeah, I was there for like most of it. Or like lurking. Shmee shmee. Shmee 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 shmee. And now I shall continue. The hobbit shuddered. Even in the Shire, the rumour of the Barrow Wights of the Barrow Downs beyond the forest had been heard. But it was not a tale that any hobbit liked to listen to, even by comfortable fireside far away. These 4 now suddenly remembered what the joy of this house had driven from their minds. The house of Tom Bombadil nestled under the very shoulder of those dreaded hills. They lost the thread of his tale and shifted uneasily, looking aside at one another. When they caught his words again, they found that he had now wandered into strange regions beyond their memory and beyond their waking thought, into times when the world was wider and the seas flowed straight to the western shore. And still on and back Tom went singing into ancient starlight, when only the when only the elf sires were awake. Then suddenly he stopped, and they saw that he nodded as if he was falling asleep. The hobbit sat still before him and chanted, and it seemed as if under the spell of his words the wind had gone, the clouds had dried up, and the day had been withdrawn. And darkness had come from east and west, and all the sky was filled with the light of white stars. It's time for some more water. Whether the morning and evening of one day or of many days had passed, Frodo could not tell. He did not feel either hungry or tired, only filled with wonder. The stars shone through the window, and the silence of the heavens seemed to be around him. He spoke at last out of his wonder and a sudden fear of that silence. "Who are you, master?" he asked. What?" said Tom, sitting up, and his eyes glinting in the gloom. "Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Tell me who you alone, yourself and nameless." Tell me who you are alone, yourself and nameless." "You are young and I am old. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made paths before the big people and saw the little people arriving. He was here before the kings and the graves and the barrow whites, when the elves passed westward. Tom was already here. Was here already. Before the seas were bent. He knew the dark under the stars when it was fearless, before the dark Lord came from outside." Is he a god? Because that would only make sense. That he's a god. Mm-hmm. Click in my back. Okay. Oh, wow. A shadow seemed to pass by the window, and the hobbits glanced hastily through the panes. When they turned again, Goldberry stood in the door behind the frame and light. She held a candle, shielding its flame from the draught with her hand, and the light flowed through it, like sunlight through a white shell. "The rain has ended," she said, "and new waters are running downhill." Yeah, there. And new waters are running downhill, under the stars. Let us now laugh and be glad. "Let us have food and drink," cried Tom. "Long tails are thirsty, and long listening hungry for work. Morning, noon, and evening." With that he jumped out of his chair, and with a bound took a candle from the chimney shelf, and lit it in the flame that Goldberry held. Then he danced about the table, suddenly hopped through the door, and disappeared. Quickly he returned, bearing a large and laden tray. And Tom and Goldberry set the table, and the hobbits drew half in wonder and half in laughter. So fair was the grace of Goldberry, and so merry and odd the caperings of Tom, yet in some fashion they seemed to weave a single dance, neither hindering the other in and out of the room. And round about the table, with a great speed, food and vessels and lights were set in order. The boards blazed with candles, white and yellow. Tom bowed to his guests. "Supper is ready," said Goldberry, and now the hobbits saw that she was clothed all in silver, with a white girdle. Her shoes were like fish's mail. But Tom was all in clean blue, blue as rain-washed forget-me-nots, and he had green stockings. Let me have another sip. It was supper evening better than before. Oh my god, I skipped an A. It was a supper even better than before. The hobbits, under the spell of Tom's words, may have missed one meal or many, but when the food was before them, it seemed at least a week since they had eaten. They did not sing or even speak much for a while, paid close attention to business, but after a time their hearts and spirits rose high again, and their voices rang out in mirth and laughter. After they had eaten, Goldberry sang many songs for them, songs that began merrily in the hills and fell softly down into silence. And in that silences they saw in their minds pools and waters wider than any they had known. Looking into them, they saw the sky below them and the stars like jewels in depths. Then once more she wished them each good night and left them by the fireside, but Tom now seemed wide awake and plied them with many questions. He appeared already to know much about them and all their families. "Oh, Sophia, thank you so much for the raid. Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm Moggy, Purple Little Luke Ramlin, and I'm just doing a reading stream. We're reading Lord of the Rings. Let me give you a shout out. Oops, sorry. Nope, never mind. It was shut up. You've been shouted out. How was your stream? Hello. Hi there, Key. Hi there, Ducky again. I said thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Ah. Hello, I was forced here by Ducky. Oh. Well, even though it's forced, I hope you enjoy a little bit of reading. Hi, Gray. How you doing? But yeah, thank you, Ducky. Thank you. He even did the murder on her in game. Wow. Wow. Oh, I'm a raider on this tab. Oh, you've been having a good read. Yeah. I've been enjoying. But this is the most I've read in one go, out loud, 2 hours. Got an hour to go. My throat's straining a little, but I'ma keep going. You're doing great, Moggy. Thank you, Key. I appreciate it. But I hope you had a great stream, Sophelia. And if you wish to relax, head off or eat foods and all that jazz, don't be afraid to. If you'd like to enjoy some cozy reading, you're more than welcome to. She usually only reads 5 to 10 minutes, so she'll be doing really well. Thank you, Zen. No, don't let her eat. What? What if she needs some food in her belly? Let her eat. Food is splendid. Hobbits need like 5 meals a day, but I think it's more, actually. She starved the kitties. No! How can you starve the kitties? Not the kitties. I might use this fire to sleep through tonight. This is so nice and cozy. It's so nice. Schmar. But I think I shall continue reading, if I remember where I was. I found where I was. But thank you again for the raid, Sophia. I appreciate it. He appeared ready to know much about them and all their families, and indeed to know much of all the history and doings of the Shire down from days hardly remembered among the hobbits themselves. It no longer surprised them, but he made no secret that he owed his recent knowledge largely to Farmer Maggot, who he seemed to regard as a person of more importance than they had imagined. There's earth under his old feet and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both his eyes are open, said Tom. It was also clear that Tom had dealings with the elves, and it seemed that in some fashion news had reached him from Gildor concerning the flight of Frodo. Tom's everywhere. He's just everywhere. He must be a god. Okay, where am I? Indeed, so much did Tom know, and so cunning was his questions, that Frodo found himself telling him more about Bilbo and his hopes and fears that he had told before even to Gandalf. Tom wagged his head up and down, and there was a glint in his eyes when he heard of the riders. "Show me the precious ring," he said suddenly in the midst of the story, and Frodo, to his own astonishment, drew out the chain from his pocket and, unfastening the ring, handed it at once to Tom. It seemed to grow larger as it lay there for a moment on his big brown-skinned hand. Then suddenly he put it to his eye and laughed. For a second the hobbits had a vision, both comical and alarming, of his bright blue eye gleaming through a circle of gold. Then Tom put the ring around the end of his little finger and held it up to the candlelight. For a moment the hobbits noticed nothing strange about this. Then they gasped. There was no sign of Tom disappearing. Tom laughed again, and then he spun the ring in the air, and it vanished with a flash. Frodo gave a cry, and Tom leaned forward and handed it back to him with a smile. Frodo looked at it closely and rather suspiciously, like the one who had lent a trinket to a juggler. It was the same ring, or looked the same, and it weighed the same, for that ring had always seemed to Frodo to weigh strangely heavy in the hand. But something prompted him to make sure. He was perhaps a trifle annoyed with Tom for seeming to make so light of what even Gandalf thought was so perilously important. He waited for an opportunity when the talk was going again and Tom was telling an absurd story about badgers and the queer ways. Then he slipped the ring on. Merry turned towards him to say something and gave a start and checked an exclamation. Frodo was delighted, in a way. It was own ring, all right. It was his own ring, all right. The Merry was staring blankly at his chair and obviously could not see him. He got up and crept quietly away from the fireside towards the outer door. "Hey there," cried Tom, glancing towards him with the most seeing look in his shining eyes. "Hey, come Frodo there. Where be you a-goin'? Oh, Tom Bombadil's not as blind as that yet. Take off your golden ring. Your hand's more fair without it. Come back. Leave your game and sit down beside me. I must talk a while more and think about the morning. Tom must teach the right road and keep your feet from wandering." Frodo laughed, trying to feel pleased, and taking off the ring Frodo laughed, trying to feel pleased, and taking off the ring he came and sat down again. Tom now told them that he reckoned the sun would shine tomorrow and it would be a glad morning, and setting out would be hopeful. But they would do well to start early, for weather in that country was a thing that even Tom could not be sure for long. And it would change sometimes quicker than he could change his jacket. "I am no weather master," he said, "nor is aught that goes on two legs." I'm so curious of Tom Bombadil, because why didn't the ring not work on him? Who is he? By his advice, they decided to make nearly due north from his house, over the western and lower slopes of the downs. They might hope in the way to strike the east road in a day's journey and avoid the barrows. He told them not to be afraid, but to mind their own business. Keep to the green grass. Don't you go a-meddling with old stone or cold whites or prying into their houses, unless you be strong folk with hearts that never falter. He said this more than once, and he advised them to pass barrows by on the west side, if they chanced to stray near one. Then he taught them a rhyme to sing if they should by ill luck fall into any danger or difficulty by the next day. Ho, Tom Bombadil, by water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow. By fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. When they had sung this all together after him, he clapped them each on the shoulder with a laugh, and taking candles lit them back to their bedroom. "Oh, thank you so much for the subscription, Asia. I appreciate it. 12 months! Oh, whoa. How you been, man? It's been a year, I know. Time has gone so fast. Time has gone so fast. How are you doing? Oh, we're on chapter 8. Whoa! Fog on the Barrow Downs. July is when I started streaming too. Dang. It's been a year for you. Just doing some reading. Well, a lot of reading. 2 hours so far. Going for 3 hours. Wah. My back is sore. It's not my jaw that's sore. For some reason, it's my tongue. I think I am allergic to coffee. My tongue feels like thicker. But not too much. I am sitting up straight. I feel like that's what's hurting me. And how's it going with you, Asia?
Already fed you.
I am drinking water. I'm doing it right now. Taking a break before I start the next chapter. Clear that throat. Going to a wedding today, then immediately coming back to stream. Oh, that was a busy fucking day, Asia. But I hope you had fun at the wedding and get to eat lots of food. I don't know when's the last time I've been to a wedding. When I was a kid. Probably. That is the goal. Food. I hope you enjoy. Kicks window down. Boom, baby. Hey, zombie. How you doing? My throat. It dies. Ah! Ready? I hope your day goes swell. What was the saying that was said before? I really like that. Fuck, I forgot it already. That, Fredegar said. Chilling last night, my neighbors was yelling at each other from across the street. Oh. Drama. Well, I hope it all calmed down. Hope you're ready for a nice cozy stream. Shall we continue? We've got 40 minutes left. 40 minutes left. I'm going to do a full 3 hours. Chapter 8. Fog on the Barrow Downs. That night they heard no noises, but either in his dreams or out of them, he could not tell which. Frodo heard a sweet singing running in his mind. As good neighbors, we peeked from upstairs bedroom window, lol, and went back to gaming. You know, that's fair. That's fair. Very fair. A song that seemed to come like a pale light behind a grey rain curtain, and growing stronger to turn the veil all to glass and silver, until at last it was rolled back, and a far green country opened before him under a swift sunrise. The vision melted into waking, and there was Tom whistling like a tree full of birds, and the sun was already slanting down the hill and through the open window. Outside everything was green and gold. Outside everything was green and pale gold. First I have seen them that mad since I moved into my house last year in November. It must have been something. Wild, they must have shiked that then if it's not a common thing. Shmer. After breakfast, which they again ate alone, they made ready to say farewell, as nearly heavy-hearted as was possible on such a morning, cool, bright, and clean under a washed autumn sky of thin blue. The air came fresh from the northwest. The quiet ponies were almost frisky, sniffing and moving restlessly. Tom came out of the house and waved his hat and danced upon the doorstep, bidding the hobbits to get up and be off and go with good speed. All I heard was get out now, and door slams. Oof. Ooh. That seems like it was really bad then. Dang. They rode off along the path that wound away from behind the house and went slanting up towards the north end of the hill brow under which it sheltered. They had just dismounted to lead their ponies up the last steep slope, and suddenly Frodo stopped. "Goldberry," he cried, "my fair lady, clad in silver green. We have never said farewell to her, nor seen her since the morning." He was so distressed that he turned back, but at that moment a clear call came rippling down. There on the hill brow she stood beckoning to them. Her hair was flying loose as it caught the sun. It shone and shimmered. A light-like glint of water on dewy grass flashed from under her feet as she danced. They hastened up the last slope and stood breathlessly beside her. They bowed, but with a wave of her arm she bade them look around, and they looked out from the hilltop over the lands under the morning. It was now a clear and far scene as it had been, veiled and misty when they stood upon the knoll in the forest, which could now be seen rising pale and green out of the dark trees in the west. In that direction the land rose in wooded ridges, green, yellow, russet under the sun, and beyond which lay hidden the valley of the Brandywine. To the south over the line of the Withy window there was a distant glint like pale grass, where the Brandywine River made a great loop in the lowlands and flowed away out of the knowledge of the hobbits. Northward beyond the dwindling downs, the land ran away in flats and swellings of grey and green and pale earth colors. Under it faded into featureless and shadowy distance. Eastward the Barrow Downs rose, ridge behind the ridge, into the morning and vanished out of the eyesight into a guess. It was no more than a guess of blue and a remote white glimmer blending with the hem of the sky. but it spoke to them out of memory and old tales of the high and distant mountains. Whoa. Mhm. You finished the story called Homecoming Murder. It was good. Plot and killer was the least person I expected. Oh, that was well written if you couldn't tell what the killer was. You know? Mm-hmm. Glad you enjoyed it. They took a deep draught. Lots of suspects, and I got them wrong. Lol. That's good writing then. They took a deep draught of the air and felt that a skip and a few stout strides would bear them whatever they wished. It seemed faint-hearted to go jogging aside the crumpled skirts of the downs towards the road. And they should be leaping, as lusty as Tom, over the stepping stones of the hills straight towards the mountains. Goldberry spoke to them and recalled their eyes and thoughts. Speed now, furry guest, she said, and hold to your purpose. North while the wind in the left eye and a blessing on your footsteps. Make haste while the sun shines, and to Frodo she said, Farewell, our friend, it was a merry meeting. But Frodo found no words to answer. He bowed low and mounted his pony, and followed by his friends, jogged slowly down the gentle slope behind the hill. Tom Bombadil's house in the valley and the forest were lost to view. The air grew warmer between the green walls of hillside, and the scent of turf rose strong and sweet as they breathed. Turning back when they reached the bottom of the green hollow, they saw Goldberry, now small and slender like a sunlit flower against the sky. She was standing still watching them, and her hands were stretched out towards them. As they looked, she gave a clear call, and lifting up her hand, she turned and vanished behind the hill. I'm gonna have another sip of water. Murmur. And a vape. Okay. Their way wound along the floor of the hollow, and round the green feet of a steep hill into another deeper and broader valley, then over the shoulder of further hills and down their long limbs, and up their smooth sides again, up onto new hilltops and down into new valleys. There were no tree nor any visible water. It was a country of grass and short springy turf, silent except for the whisper of the air over the edges of the land, and the high lonely cries of strange birds. As they journeyed, the sun mounted and grew hot. Each time they climbed a ridge, and the breeze seemed to have grown less. When they caught a glimpse of the country westward, the distant forest seemed to be smoking, as if the fallen rain was steaming up again from the leaf and root and mold. A shadow now lay round the edge of sight, a dark haze above which the upper sky was like a blue cap, hot and heavy. About midday they came to a hill whose top was wide and flattened, like a shallow saucer with green mounded rim. Inside there was no air stirring, and the sky seemed near their heads. I still find the killer reason that the murder was stupid, but hey, I buy time till the cops arrive, and it was nice through the story. I picked some choices that my character doesn't really care about people's opinions. That's not her friends and family. I see. They rode across and looked northwards. Then their hearts rose, for it seemed plain that they had come further already than they had expected. Certainly the distances had now all become hazy and deceptive, but there could be no doubt that the downs were coming to an end. Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Just had a very lazy day. Had to be there for my mother doing something, and now cozy reading stream. A long valley lay below them, winding away northwards until it came to an opening between two steep shoulders. Beyond there seemed to be no more hills. Due north they faintly glimpsed a long dark line. That is a line of trees, said Mary, and that must mark the road. All along it for many leagues east of the bridge there are trees growing. Some say they were planted in the old days. Splendid, said Frodo. If we make a good going this afternoon, as we have done this morning, we shall have left the downs before sunsets, and be jogging on in search of a camping place. Then, even as he spoke, he turned his glance eastward, and he saw that on that side the hill were higher and looked down upon them. And all those hills were crowned with green mounds, and on some were standing stones pointing upwards like jagged teeth out of green gums. That view was somehow disquieting, so they turned from the sight and went down the hollow circle. In the midst of it, there stood a single stone standing tall under the sun, and at this hour casting no shadow. It was shapeless yet significant, like a landmark or a guarding finger, or more like a warning. But they were now hungry, and the sun was still as the fearless noon, so they set their backs against the east side of the stone. It was cool, as if the sun had no power to warm them. But at that time this seemed pleasant. There they took food and drink, and made as good a noon meal under the open sky as anyone could wish, for the food came from down under hill. Tom had provided them with plenty for the comfort of the day. The ponies, unburdened, strayed upon the grass. I'll have some water. Blip, blip, blip. Have some drunken tea here. Shma. There we go. Have a little vape. Oh, 13 minutes to go. Feels like the last hour was going so fast. Riding over the hills and eating their fill, the warm sun and the scent of turf, lying a little too long, stretching out their legs and looking at the sky above their noses. These things are perhaps enough to explain what happened. However that may be, they woke suddenly and unforgettably and uncomfortably from a sleep they had never meant to take. The standing stone was cold, and it cast a long pale shadow that stretched that stretched eastward over them. The sun, a pale and watery yellow, was gleaming through the mist just above the west wall of the hollow in which they lay. North, south, and east, beyond the wall, the fog was thick, cold, and white. The air was silent, heavy, and chill. The ponies were standing crowded together with their heads down. The hobbits sprang to their feet in alarm and ran to the eastern rim. They found they were upon an island in the fog. Even as they looked out in dismay towards the oh God, my throat! Give me 1 moment. Okay, there we go. I lost where I was. With this music in the background, kind of makes me feel like I should just go for a walk where it takes me and see where it takes me. Who knows? It does give that nice calming feel. It's one of my favorite songs from The Lord of the Rings concerning hobbits. Now, where was I? Even as they looked out in dismay towards the setting sun, it sank before their eyes into a white sea, and a cold grey shadow sprang in the east behind. The fog rolled up to the walls and rose above them, and as it mounted it bent over their heads until it became a roof, and they were shut in a hall of mist whose central pillar was the standing stone. They felt as if a trap was closing about them, but they did not quite lose heart. They still remembered the hopeful view they had had of the line of the road ahead, and they still knew in which direction it lay. In any case, they now had a great dislike for that hollow place about the stone that no thought of remaining there was in their minds. They packed up as quickly as their chilled fingers would work. Soon they were leading their ponies in single file over the rim and down the long northward slope of the hill into a foggy sea. As they went down, the mist became colder and damper, and their hair hung lank and dripping on their foreheads. When they reached the bottom, it was so cold that they halted and got out cloaks and hoods, which soon became bedewed with grey drops. Then, mounting their ponies, they went slowly on again, feeling their way by the rise and fall of the ground. They were steering as well as they could guess for the gate-like opening at the far north end of the long valley which they had seen in this morning. Once they were through the gap, they had only to keep on in anything like a straight line, and they were bound in the end to strike the road. The thoughts did not go beyond that, except for a vague hope that perhaps away beyond that, way beyond the downs, there might be no fog. More drink, more drink. Their going was very slow. To prevent their getting separated and wandering in different directions, they went in file, with Frodo leading. Sam was behind him, and after him came Pippin and then Merry. The valley seemed to stretch on endlessly. Suddenly Frodo saw a hopeful sign. On either side ahead, a darkness began to loom through the mist, and he guessed that they were at last approaching the gap in the hills. The north gate of the Barrel Downs. If they could pass that, they would be free. "Come on, follow me," he called back over his shoulder, and he hurried forward, but his hope soon changed to bewilderment and alarm. The dark patches grew darker, but they shrank, and suddenly he saw towering ominously before him, and leading slightly towards one another like pillars of a headless door, 2 huge standing stones. He could not remember having seen any sign of these in the valley when he looked out from the hill in the morning. He had passed between them almost before he was aware, and even as he did so, darkness seemed to fall around him. His pony reared and snorted, and he fell off, and when he looked back, he found that he was alone. The others had not followed him. "Sam," he called. "Pippin, Merry, come along. Why don't you keep up?" There was no answer. Fear took him, and he ran back past the stones, shouting wildly, "Sam, Sam, Merry, Pippin!" The pony bolted into the mist and vanished. From some way off, so it seemed, he heard a cry, "Hoy, Frodo, hoy!" It was away eastward on his left as he stood under the great stones, staring and straining into the gloom. He plunged off into the direction of the call and found himself going steeply uphill. As he struggled on, he called again and kept on calling more and more frantically, but he heard no answer for some time. Then it seemed faint and far ahead and high above him. "Frodo, hoy!" came the thin voices out of the mist, and then a cry that sounded like "Help, help!" Often repeated, ended with a last "Help!" It trailed off into a long wail, suddenly cut short. He stumbled forward with all the speed he could towards the cries, but the light was now gone. The clinging night there had closed about him, so that it was impossible to be sure of any direction. He seemed all the time to be climbing up and up. Only the change in the level ground his feet told him, and he at last came to the top of a ridge or hill. He was weary, sweating, yet chilled. It was wholly dark. "Where are you?" he cried miserably. There was no reply. He stood listening. He was suddenly aware that it was getting very cold and that up here a wind was beginning to blow. An icy wind, a change was coming in the weather. The mist was flowing past him now in shreds and tatters. His breathing was smoking, and the darkness was less near and thick. He looked up and saw with surprise that faint stars were appearing overhead amid the strands of hovering cloud and fog. The wind began to hiss over the grass. He imagined suddenly that he caught a muffled cry, and he made towards it, and even as he went forward, the mist was rolled up and thrust aside, and the starry sky was unveiled. A glance showed him that he was now facing southwards and was on a round hilltop, which he must have climbed from the north. Out of the east, the biting wind was blowing. To his right there loomed against the westward stars a dark black shape. A great barrel stood there. "Oh, I need to pee. I will be right back. One moment." Shmashma. I'm back. God, I got jump scared by my hands because when I was washing my hands, you know the bits like it's just below your thumb, like that little round bit. Both hands they were completely blue. They are still a bit blue. When I washed it with freezing cold water, and I was like, what? So I was like, huh. That got me a little scared. But the water was icy. Okay, let me have a sip of drink. And we'll continue again. Ah. Okay, now where am I? Oh god, my throat. Okay. I think I am here. Lack of oxygen and blood flow caused by constricting blood vessels. Just warm him up. I shall do that. Shimmer. Lack of oxygen. Am I not breathing enough? Air. Shimmer. The heck? Okay. I lost where I was. I think I found it. Where are you? He cried again, both angry and afraid. Here, said a voice, deep and cold, that seemed to come out of the ground. I am waiting for you. No, said Frodo, but he did not run away. His knees gave, and he fell on the ground. Nothing happened, and there was no sound. Trembling, he looked up, in time to see a tall, dark figure like a shadow against the stars. It leaned over him. He thought there were two eyes, very cold, though it lit with a pale light that seemed to come from some remote distance. Then a grip stronger and colder than iron seized him. The icy touch froze his bones. He remembered no more. When he came to himself again for a moment, he could recall nothing except a sense of dread. Then suddenly he knew that he was imprisoned, caught hopelessly. He was in a barrow. A barrow right had taken him, and he was probably already under the dreadful spells of a barrow rights about which whispered tales. Under the spells of the barrow rights, about which whispered tales spoke. He dare not move, but lay as he found himself, flat on his back upon a cold stone with his hands on his breast. But though his fear was so great that he seemed to be a part of the very darkness that was round him, he found himself as he lay thinking about Bilbo Baggins and his stories of their jogging along together in the lanes of the Shire, talking about roads and adventures. There's a seed of courage. Oh God, my throat is faltering. I got 10 minutes, I can do this. Often deeply, it is true, in the heart of the fattest, most timid hobbit, waiting for some final desperate danger to make it grow. Frodo was neither very fat nor very timid indeed, though he did not know it. Bilbo and Gandalf had thought him the best hobbit in the Shire. He thought he had come to the end of his adventure, and a terrible end, but the thought hardened him. He found himself stiffening as if for a final spring. He no longer felt limp like a helpless prey. I need me some lip balm. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? There we go. Okay, now where was I? As he lay there thinking and getting a hold of himself, he noticed all at once that the darkness was slowly giving away. A pale greenish light was growing around him. Oh God, my throat. Yeah, I'm gonna drink something. No, throat, don't give up on me now. Hey. There we go. Wait, give me a moment. Sorry, I just can't seem to stop coughing. Bleh. Bleh, 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 bleh. And I took some more spray. As he lay there thinking and getting a hold of himself, he noticed all at once that the darkness was slowly giving way. A pale greenish light was growing around him. It did not at first show him what kind of place he was in, for the light seemed to be coming out of himself, from the floor beside him, and had not yet reached the roof of wall. He turned, and there in the cold grew, and he turned, and there in the cold glow he saw lying beside him Sam, Pippin, and Mary. They were on their backs, and their faces turned deathly pale. Ah, no, throat! I need me some cough syrup. They were on their backs, and their faces looked deathly pale, and they were clad in white. About them lay many treasures of gold, maybe, though in that light they looked cold and unlovely. On their heads were circlets, gold chains about their waists, and on their fingers were many rings. Swords lay by their sides. Shields were at their feet, but across their 3 necks lay one long, naked sword. Yeesh. Suddenly a song began, a cold murmur, rising and falling. The voice seemed far away and immeasurably dreary, sometimes high in the air and thin, sometimes like a low moan from the ground. Out of the formless stream of sad but horrible sounds, strings of words would now and again shape themselves, grim, hard, cold words, heartless and miserable. The night was railing against the morning of which it was bereaved, and the cold was cursing the warmth for which it hungered. Frodo was chilled to the marrow, but after a while the song became clearer, and with the dread in his heart he perceived that it had changed into an incantation. Cold be hand and heart and bone, and cold be sleep under stone. Never more to wake on stony bed, never till the sun fails and the moon is dead. In the black wind the stars shall die, and still on gold here let them lie, till the dark Lord lifts his hand over dead sea and withered land. He heard behind his hand a creaking and scraping sound, and raising himself on one hand he looked, and saw now in the pale light that they were in a kind of passage, which behind them turned a corner. Round the corner a long arm was groping, walking on its fingers towards Sam, who was lying nearest, and towards the hilt of the sword that lay upon him. At first Frodo felt as if he had indeed been turned into stone by the incantation. Then a wild thought of escape came to him. He wondered if he put on the ring, whether Barrow White would miss him, and he might find some way out. He thought of himself running free over the grass, grieving for Merry and Sam and Pippin, but free and alive himself. Gandalf would admit that there had been nothing else he could do. But the courage that had also been awakened in him was now too strong. He could not leave his friend so easily. He wavered, groping in his pocket, and then fought with himself again. And as he did so, the arm crept nearer. Sudden resolve hardened in him, and he seized the short sword that lay beside him, and kneeling, he stooped low over the bodies of his companions. What strength he had, he hewed at the crawling arm near the wrist. The hand broke off. At the same moment, the sword splintered up to the hilt. There was a shriek, and the light vanished. In the dark, there was a snarling noise. Frodo fell forward over Merry, and Merry's face felt cold. All at once, back in his mind, from which it had disappeared with the first coming of the fog, came the memory of the house down under the hill and of Tom singing. He remembered the rhyme that Tom had taught them. A small, desperate voice he began, "Ho, Tom Bombadil," and with that name his voice seemed to grow stronger. At a full and lively sound, and the dark chamber echoed as if it to drum and trumpet. Ho, Tom Bombadil, Dillo, by water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow, by fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. There was a sudden deep silence in which Frodo could hear his heart beating. After a long, slow moment he heard plain. but far away as if it was coming down through the ground or through thick walls, an answering voice singing. Old Tomabille, Dividend, Old Tom Badil is a merry fellow. Bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow. None has ever caught him yet, for Tom he is the master. His songs are strongest, his song of strongest songs, and his feet are faster. There's a loud rumbling sound as of stones rolling and falling, and suddenly light streamed in, and real light, the plain light of day. A low door like opening appeared at the end of the chamber, beyond Frodo's feet, and there was Tom's head, hat, feather, and all, framed against the light of the sun, rising red behind him. The light fell upon the floor, and upon the faces of the 3 hobbits lying beside Frodo. They did not stir, but the sickly hue had left them. They looked now as if they were only very deeply asleep. Tom stooped, and removed his hat, and came into the dark chamber, singing, Get out, you old wight, vanish in the sunlight, shrivel like the cold mist, like the winds go wailing. Out into the barren lands, far beyond the mountains. Come never here again, leave your barrow empty. Lost and forgotten be, darker than the darkness, where gates stand for ever shut till the world is mended. And at these words there was a cry, and part of the inner end of the chamber fell in with a crash. Then there was a long trailing shriek, fading away into an unguessable distance, and after that silence. Come, friend Frodo, said Tom, let us get out to clean grass. You must help me bear them. Together they carried out Merry, Pippin, and Sam. As Frodo left the barrow for the last time, he thought he saw a severed hand wriggling still like a wounded spider in a heap of fallen earth. Tom went back in again, and there was a sound of much thumping and stamping. When he came out, he was bearing in his arms a great load of treasure, things of gold, silver, copper, and bronze, many beads and chains and jeweled ornaments. He climbed the green barrel and laid them all on top in the sunshine. There he stood with his hat in his hand and the wind in his hair, and looked down upon the 3 hobbits that had been laid on their backs upon the grass at the west side of the mound. Raising his right hand, he said in a clear and commanding voice, Wake now, my merry lads, wake and hear me calling. Warm now be heart and limb, the cold stone has fallen. Dark door is standing wide, dead hand is broken, night under night is flown, and the gate is open. To Frodo's great joy, the hobbits stirred and stretched their arms, rubbed their eyes, and then suddenly sprang up. They looked about in amazement, first at Frodo, and then at Tom standing large as life on the barrow top above them, and then at themselves in their thin white rags, crowned and belted with pale gold and jingling with trinkets. What in the name of wonder, began Merry, feeling the golden circlet that had slipped over one eye. Then he stopped, and a shadow came over his face, and he closed his eyes. Of course I remember, he said. The men of Carn-Dûm came on us at night, and we were worsted. Ah, the spear in my heart, he clutched at his breast. No, no, he said, opening eyes. What am I saying? I've been dreaming. Where did you get to, Frodo? I thought that I was lost, said Frodo, but I don't want to speak of it. Let us think of what we ought to do now. Let us go on. Dressed up like this, sir, said Sam. Where are my clothes? He flung his circlet, belt, and rings on the grass, and looked around helplessly as if he expected to find his cloak, jacket, and breeches, and other hobbit garments lying somewhere to hand. You won't find your clothes again, said Tom, bounding down from the mound, and laughed as he danced around them in the sunlight. One would have thought that nothing dangerous or dreadful had happened, and indeed the horror faded out of their hearts as they looked at him and saw the merry glint in his eyes. What do you mean? Asked Frodo. What do you mean? Asked Pippin, looking at them half puzzled and half amused. Why not? But Tom shook his head, saying, You found yourselves again out of deep water. Clothes are but less Clothes are but little loss if you escape from drowning. Be glad, my merry friends, that the warm sunlight heat now heart and limb. Cast off those cold rags, run naked on the grass while Tom goes a-hunting. 3, 2, 1. 3 hours. It's been 3 hours. And I'm gonna leave it there. Blah, 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 blah. Itty baby blah. Oh, my mouth hurts. Oh, it hurts so. Woo! 3-hour stream of reading. I need me a relax. You did great. Thank you, Ducky. I hope you guys enjoyed as well. Although it was kind of fun. Part of me is like, doesn't mind if I do like once a month, like the last day of the month type of thing. I definitely would get through more books if I did that. Oh god, I remembered I promised Ronnie that after I read Lord of the Rings, I'm gonna read that terrible fan fiction. Again. Maybe I'll do that at the end of the last day of every month. Well, not last day, the last stream of every month. Yeah. Something like that. But yeah, why don't we raid on out? I'm going to mute this and turn that off. Actually, no, I will just ignore it and I will try back, but this, I'm tired. I wish to relax. Shmar. I wish to relax. And I'm sleepy. Who shall we raid? Why don't we raid Shrade? You guys can watch some Mabinogis. Videos. I'm gonna click start raid. Alright, thank you everybody who chilled, vibe, lurked, and enjoyed. Thank you to Ducky, to Red Ducky 95 and Sophelia for the raids. Thank you all who just enjoyed. If you enjoyed this, free, leave a cheeky old follow. Blah, 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 blah. We'll be back tomorrow with boulders. Fucking hopefully. Please. And for the king. Now be respectful and follow Shrade's rules and so Gremlin raid. And I'll see you guys while I go have a nice relax.